a hell of a Tuesday show. Boy, do we have breaking news for you in a second that's going to rock your world.
Do we?
We do, my friend, we do. Later in the program, though, we've got a fascinating race brewing in Georgia. As you guys might know about, we've got some details you might not know about. Yeah. My conclusions on North Korea. We're getting a conclusion.
Conclusions?
Yes, and some of them will be dramatic. Okay.
We're sending the CIA in, we're taking that guy out.
No. I'm starting to get to a conclusion on what might happen, and it is not a good or happy conclusion.
See, I've reached my likely conclusion, I'll give that 2, and it's happier.
Okay, good.
But I'm a hopeful guy, I watched Star Trek growing up, come on.
Sure, fine. On to uncharted territory. No, that's not what I was looking at. What did they say in Star Trek in the beginning? Anyways.
Oh, you're talking about like, the Kirk speech,
yeah. Anyways, also both first hour and second hour Ivanka Trump stories. Is she actually popular with young women? And how well is her sales going? And to what degree is it a conflict of interest? And you know the answer to the last question, which is massive, but we'll explain why and how, and the hypocrisy of trade with China and the Trumps. Okay. I can't wait. Let's get to the main news. Let's get to the breaking news, okay? No, me.
But thank you for the assumption that it would be me.
That's true, right?
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and most you would be right 90% of the time. All right, anyways, breaking news, guys, about Bill O'Reilly. Now, this is dramatic. Hold. Let me give you a little bit of what happened earlier today to give you context for what appears to be happening later today. First of all, we got reports out about a new sexual harassment issue for Bill O'Reilly. Law News writes there's a new accuser, and the woman, an African American who worked as a clerical worker in 2008 at Fox News, claims Bill O'Reilly engaged in a pattern of harassment that lasted for months, including making animal noises at her. I'm not sure I want to know which animal. I don't know. What does the fox say? Just now I came up with that. Anyway, as you can tell. And he was apparently staring at her cleavage and calling her hot chocolate. You are, first of all, you are so old. I mean, not only are you a perv, not only have you learned nothing from all the different sexual harassment lawsuits that Fox News and you have had to suffer. I mean, all the calls where you accidentally rubbed the falafel on the women and your phone sex, which was unsolicited and unrequited, but you go and call an African-American woman hot chocolate? What century are you from? All right, anyway, Lisa Bloom representing some of the women who are suing Trump points out in this case, like Wendy Walsh, the other person that Lisa Bloom is representing, she's the lawyer, like Wendy Walsh, the new O'Reilly accuser who I represent is not asking for money, just accountability. Watch this space, she says. Well, actually, we're watching the whole space. Then we go to New York Magazine. They're reporting 3 sources with knowledge of the discussions between the Murdochs, both the father, Rupert Murdoch, and the sons, James and Lachlan, said that while no final decision has been made, the Murdochs are leaning towards announcing that O'Reilly will not return to the air. Damn, I'm not done yet though. Hold, okay, it's developing right now. Apparently the 2 sons say he's gotta go. Rupert Murdoch, the dad, who of course owns News Corp, is saying, I'm not sure yet, I'm thinking of sticking by my man. One network insider said Fox executives are alarmed by the severity of the ad revenue decline. It's worse than Glenn Beck, the insider said, referring to the advertiser revolt that helped derail Beck's Fox News career in 2011. Remember, Glenn Beck gone from Fox News because so many advertisers pulled out. I don't know if you know this, they're in the business. This is not a nonprofit. So when they start losing money, oh boy, you're in a world of trouble. It doesn't matter how popular. If you don't remember, Glenn Beck actually had great ratings at 5 o'clock. He was gone anyway because the advertisers pulled out. But that's not the only financial issue at stake here for Fox News and News Corp. Another factor, New York Magazine explains, the Murdochs pending $14 billion takeover of European pay TV provider Sky. On May 16th, the British media regulator Ofcom is set to judge whether the Murdochs are, quote, fit and proper to own such a large media property. Removing O'Reilly could appease critics and help close the Sky deal. When you got a $14 billion deal on the line, then you begin to rethink your top-rated host. And then, right before we came on air live, Matt Drudge tweeting, O'Reilly has had a tremendous run. Very few in the business get to decide when and how things end. Media is most brutal of all industries.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Down goes O'Reilly. Down goes O'Reilly. Now, it's not 100% certain yet, and Matt Drudge is normally very unreliable because he has a conservative agenda and propaganda, etc. But in this case, when you're talking about conservative news, he does have very good sources inside the conservative world and far more reliable in circumstances like this.
Yeah, I've never understood how he has the pull that he does. Look at his website, but that's possible, and this tweet could indicate that he's talking to those sources. This tweet also fits in perfectly naturally based on just the stuff that you discussed already, that this stuff is going around, it looks pretty bad for him. His tweet makes perfect sense even without him having secret knowledge that O'Reilly is out. I mean, look, as soon as O'Reilly went on his 2-week vacation that, oh, I totally scheduled it a year ago, don't worry, it doesn't mean anything, that looked bad. And there was always the chance that he wouldn't come back. I don't know if it's a sure thing yet. I don't want to get excited. I don't want to get excited.
So first of all, ladies and gentlemen, hosting the show with me today, Debbie Downer. Okay,
Johnny Downer.
Okay, the rest of us get excited. No, seriously. Of course, John is right. It's not set in stone. News Corp has not announced it. Fox News has not announced it. The Murdochs have not announced it. First of all, as you remember, he got in massive trouble once the news broke from the New York Times. And Rupert Murdoch apparently, one of the reasons he's holding out is because he's like, I don't want to have the New York Times chase me out and have me fire Bill O'Reilly because of the New York Times because he hates them.
Yeah.
But they reported about the 5 lawsuits that were settled by Fox News about Bill O'Reilly's sexual harassment and other forms of harassment in specific. $13 million News Corp has already paid out in those settlements. And then we started to get, of course, as usual, with this person today, more announcements and revelations about how much sexual harassment he's done. And then his program was cut short by 15 minutes in his last broadcast. We pointed it out, of course, the rest of the media pointed that out as well. And then he had to go on a vacation all of a sudden. And I told you then, look, I've seen those all of a sudden vacations on mainstream media. And sometimes they come back, and a lot of times they don't come back.
Yeah.
Now, at the time, I wouldn't have said that it would have gone as much as it did, but the advertiser pullout has been massive and significant, and the $14 billion deal is just too big a number.
Yeah.
So now, again, it might be that Drudge is just speculating, but he does have good sources in conservative media. When combined with all the others, it looks like O'Reilly might be done.
Yeah, if the $14 billion thing is actually a big factor, then that's something. I mean, $13 million, that at some point you just factor that into O'Reilly's contract. Yeah, every couple of years we're gonna have to pay a couple $1 million because he keeps sexually harassing people. And remember, the New York Times reported on some of these details. A lot of those details we've previously known, and certainly Fox knew. They, after all, paid out those settlements. So remember, in the background of all of this, Fox News does not care about the actual sexual harassment. The details of this woman, the cleavage and the hot chocolate, they don't care about that either. The only way they care about it is if it leads to enough public backlash that the advertisers start to flee. And that's why the sort of activism that led to that, just like with Glenn Beck, is so important. And so we do want to see more of that, of course. But in terms of the immorality and the non-consensual nature of all this, Fox News doesn't care at all about that stuff. That's just a cost of doing business with O'Reilly.
Yeah, to give further context, O'Reilly's show, to be fair to them, makes about $170 million a year. So $13 million is sometimes a rounding error. That's why he gets paid $18 million a year, and they don't sweat that too much either. And so those, and then of course it has further costs with its staff, etc. But it makes so much money and does so well in the ratings that they were willing to overlook all this. We didn't know it before, but Fox News knew it, and they didn't care. But
well, we knew the falafel, and we knew some of that stuff.
Yeah, but remember, back then it was run by Roger Ailes, who did the same exact thing and worse than Bill O'Reilly. He couldn't have fired Bill O'Reilly for doing the same things he did. So there was no chance Bill O'Reilly was going to get fired before. Now Ailes, the guy who ran Fox News, is gone because of the sexual harassment. Now O'Reilly's left exposed, if you will. And instead of the talking points, he might soon have walking points. Anyway, and so the bottom line is always the bottom line. And when you stop talking about millions and you start talking about billions, it doesn't matter how great your ratings are. The parent corporation's interest will outweigh that particular host. By the way, that happens on other cable news programs and other corporations as well. Comcast has different considerations, and Time Warner has different considerations, and some have to do with mergers, some have to do with net neutrality. For News Corp, it has to do with British regulators approving this $14 billion and advertisers pulling out in such a significant way that it is hurting the overall bottom line for News Corp. So if O'Reilly's not gone, which I would be surprised at this point, he is going to be heavily, heavily damaged. And one more mishap with a hot chocolate or God knows what else, I don't even want to speculate, okay? Then he's in a world of trouble at a bare minimum.
Yeah.
Okay. By the way, we're still standing. After all we've been through, okay.
Yeah, well, it helps that we don't rampantly sexually harass people.
Yeah, that's slightly helpful, yes.
Yeah.
So
it was a good decision on our part.
I'll save it for when they pull down the statue. But how many people and organizations have we outlasted? Well,
capitalism, baby.
Yeah,
capitalism.
What can you do? Talking Point says possibly one more.
Oh my God. Wait until you hear what Talking Point's memo called some of the interns. It's disgusting.
All right, forward.
Anyway, okay, let's turn to some other important news going on around the country. Today is the special election for Georgia's 6th congressional district, and there, as we reported on yesterday, you have Democrat John Ossoff in reach of victory over 16 other candidates. It's this big, raucous first-round election. Now, he can theoretically win it with more than 50% and just win, or with a lower amount and then it goes to a runoff in a couple of months where his odds go down a little bit. But this is an important election, but that's not necessarily why we're talking about it today. Go out and vote. But there's other stuff going on, and we want to back up just a couple of days to a weird coincidence that happened when 4 voting machines were mysteriously stolen in that district, right on the eve of an incredibly important, nationally significant special election. So local ABC affiliates reported that the equipment was stolen on Saturday evening while a precinct manager's vehicle was parked at the Kroger on Canton Road in Marietta. The outlet specified that the 4 so-called express poll machines were the computers poll workers used to check in voters and check those off who cast ballots. So incredibly important for running actual elections. And now the Secretary of State for Georgia responded to this, specifically that it took them a lot of time to actually let him know that the machines had been stolen. They sort of sat on it. So Brian Kemp said, "It's unacceptable that the Cobb County Elections Office waited 2 days to notify my office of this theft. We've opened an investigation. We're taking steps to ensure that it has no effect on the election tomorrow. I'm confident that the results will not be compromised." That is a sentiment that the people he was just attacking echoed in the Cobb County Elections Office, with the director saying that the stolen machines can't be used to fraudulently vote in Tuesday's election. Janina Eveler also said, "We have managed that so that there's what's stolen could not impact the election." So they're saying you can't use it to vote illegally. But theoretically, if it's what manages that people have already voted, then you could mark off a bunch of people as already voted and caused a bunch of problems on election day. I'm not an expert, but that's my take. Now, they want you to feel like this is not a big breach of security, that it's not going to affect the results. But it is 4 machines that for some reason, days before the election, were just sitting in someone's car left on the road, which seems a bit suspicious to me.
Well, we don't know who did it.
What are they doing in someone's car in plain view? 4 computers.
I don't know. I don't know what they were doing there. I don't know if it was intentional, not intentional. I don't know why they didn't report it for 2 days. I don't know if it's a Republican or a Democrat or a random theft. I'd be like, voting machines. What I can get on the eBay for those? Not a lot. So you begin to, I have a sense that it was probably for a purpose because it's a very specific thing to steal, but we don't know who did it. But I do know that Republicans have an unfair advantage that when they do voter fraud, the Democrats are very reluctant to call it out. This happened on the eve of the 2012 election. There was a big scandal with Republicans getting caught on voter fraud. And Nancy Pelosi literally said, "We don't want to talk about it because it accidentally helps their Republican cause by pretending voter fraud is real. Now, in that case, it's
ironic that.
Yeah, it's super ironic. So if a Democrat does it, which I literally can't remember a large case of it happening in the over 20 years I've been covering politics, okay? But the Republicans go nuts. They'll go find things that didn't even happen and be like, oh my God, look at this kind of thing where someone's registered in a couple of states. You're allowed to be registered in a couple of states. In fact, Steve Bannon is registered in several different states.
I believe Jared Kushner, it was multiple people.
Yeah, that's right. So, but if a Republican does it, the Democrats, as usual, are like, let's not point it out too much because we think it helps them. I don't, as you can tell, I don't agree with that at all. So it provides an extra incentive for Republicans to want to get involved, especially when they're losing in the middle of Georgia. But we really have no idea who took them.
Yeah, it's funny that like they talk about voter fraud. It's all these millions of votes being cast. Which, by the way, you hear Trump talking about that anymore? Said that after 60 days they'd have a report on the voter fraud that happened. All of a sudden there's no report. Weird how that works out. And so you're supposed to believe that the elections aren't secure because all these Democrats are illegally voting. But when the Republicans do the dirty tricks that they always do, that the Democrats vote on one day, Republicans on the other, or they send out fake information about where you're supposed to go to vote, that's not a big deal. Republicans don't worry about that stuff so much because of course it helps them. But in this case, again, we don't know who stole it. They're trying to reassure us that it'll have no effect on the election. But if it ends up that Ossoff gets like 49%, is anyone going to be confident that that couldn't have had an effect? That couldn't have been vitally important? I think there's a lot of reasons to be concerned until they give us far more information about what actually happened and recover the actual machines. Check them to see if they've been used.
And do we have any idea where Erdogan was when any of this happened?
I don't know. Now, also in the background, obviously, as I said, incredibly important special election for the 6th district in Georgia going on as we're filming this right now. Now, Republicans want you to believe that they're not worried about this at all, and yet for some reason they've decided to flood the election with a ton of outside money and also outside influence. So let's see if you can recognize this voice who recorded a robocall for the election.
Only you can stop the super liberal Democrats and Nancy Pelosi's group, and in particular, John Ossoff.
The super liberals.
You know, I might be overanalyzing here, which I've been guilty of in the past from time to time. But it seemed like there was a slight pause where he had to read John Ossoff. Well, and the super liberals like, John Ossoff. It reminded me of
Abi Kibar, Trump, Sarkar.
So JR printed me out the script, and it printed out really big for some reason. And I don't think it's an accident. I think this is what they gave Trump so that he could somehow read a little bit of it. But yeah, so again, just like with Kansas, they got Trump to record a robocall. In both cases, from his tone of voice, you can tell that he doesn't actually care about these elections. And from the actual script, he doesn't know anything about the candidates or the issues in these particular elections. It's all just, he's scary, he's super lib. Marco Rubio also recorded a call, and it's very specific about the candidate. You can disagree with it, but he seems to know what he's talking about. And then also Trump, I honestly don't know if it's fear tactics or if he really doesn't know how the government works, but he said this in the robocall. If you don't vote tomorrow, Ossoff will raise your taxes, destroy your health care, and flood our country with illegal immigrants, which I think is a reasonable read for a freshman congressman in the minority party in Congress. How is he gonna do that exactly? Now, it's an important election. You can say that it's important, but if he could somehow destroy your health care and raise your taxes as one congressman in the minority party, that is actually a super liberal.
And super powerful. Maybe we should get that guy in, right?
Yeah.
See what else he can get done. All right, to me, the main takeaway from the talking points that they're using against the Democrat here is when Trump and the Republicans say he will raise your taxes, what they're actually saying is he will raise my taxes.
Yeah.
Because if you're in the middle class or the poor, Democrats like Ossoff have no interest in raising your taxes. They have no intention of doing it. They have no stated purpose in doing that, nothing of the sort. But they say yes, the multinational corporations and the very top of the tax bracket are not paying their fair share. You know who agrees with them? An overwhelming majority of Americans.
Yeah.
So when Trump says he's gonna raise your taxes, what he means is he's gonna raise my taxes because I'm at the top of the bracket and I can't stand that. He's gonna raise my donors' taxes and we can't stand that. So it's a trick. So whenever you see it from now on, and you hear Republicans saying he's gonna raise your taxes, what they're actually saying is whatever you do, don't raise taxes on my super rich friends and donors.
Yeah. So when we take our first break, when we come back, we're gonna have North Korea. Is there a cause for alarm, reasons to be scared? We're gonna get your conclusion on the North Korea situation. We're gonna judge the whole thing, figure out what's gonna happen there.
And does Trump actually know who's running North Korea? Now, I know what you're thinking, of course he doesn't. But the level of his ignorance will still surprise you, okay, when we return. All right, post game here in Studio B. It's a green screen magic of internet television.
A lot of condom breaking stories.
Any conversation that starts with marriage is an interesting thing deserves a little bit of.
When the kid cries, perhaps that's the that is an opportunity to do some. It's an opportunity to do some parenting.
Yeah, parenting is you cry, you're gone.
Oh my God.
I love that video.
Yeah, Ben, I got a great achoo. You're like, my mouth was open. She sneezed in my eye.
I used to have Donut Tower next to my desk.
Yeah, I'll dress up like a girl.
I sound confident now, Anna.
Yeah.
When we're off the air, I'm gonna be like, how is this gonna work?
When you get literally asked why 21 straight times.
Yeah.
And like at some point you're like, you're fucking with me now, right?
So I dumped the kids off at her mom's and I drove down to La Jolla for a day.
Get out, kids.
They're like, but daddy, no.
Why? What do you mean why? You asked me to look at you. You did it. You brought it up. You know you're doing it. What do you mean why? I don't know why. I was reading. She's lovely. Here's what's different. Like it is a different feeling. Everybody says this, but it's 5:11 when we're shooting this. I can't wait to go home. Like that. I can't wait to see her.
What you guys do is allow us to be open and honest, and we don't have to worry about censorship, and we don't have to worry about sponsors telling us what we can and can't say. We're accountable by our audience and our audience only, and I absolutely love that. That's the best part about being a member. We love you guys.
I just closed my Wells Fargo account.
I just divested funds from Wells Fargo.
I definitely urge you to do the same.
Please come divest. Divest today from all the big banks, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Citibank, Chase. There are so many others. Do it. We can make a difference. Water is life.
Hi guys, it's Grace from Pop Trigger, and I'm really excited to tell you about a new show I have coming out on the Pop Trigger channel. Where to begin? You know, it's not like anything I've ever done before, and honestly, I'm a little bit nervous. But what I can tell you is that it's a show about historical events and famous figures that you've known. And I'm gonna be talking about things with some of my favorite people. You know, some people have seen the show and they've said, Grace, this is messy, this is dark, and that's fair. I just hope that you'll watch the show and make your own assessment. What else can I say? I mean, I guess it's all in the title, right? It's murder with friends.
I am going to be the cop that stops him. End of this.
Back on the Young Turks. It's a good lead-in by Bart there. I just had a thought. What if Bill O'Reilly and Tomi Lahren got together?
Oh. What would he call her?
Hey, Vanilla Miss, you want to start a network together?
Skinny Vanilla Latte.
Swiss Miss, Vanilla Miss, what is it? It's Swiss Miss, right?
Swiss Miss is the milk chocolate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's,
would she want to work with? I don't know. Anyway,
who knows?
Yeah. Technically, she's still working.
Yes. If there's an opportunity, my guess is Tommy will show up. Anyway, super chat on YouTube. Bill Falafel writes in very appropriately. He says, my first day on first shift after 4 years on second shift, referring to his own job. Maybe it is actually O'Reilly. He says he's on vacation, right?
Yeah.
Finally, I get to see Jenko and the gang live. Love it. Watchers on the wall unite.
Yes.
Indeed. Thank you for being here, Bill. Kevin from Texas gave $27 to tytnetwork.com/go. $127 from Jack in Colorado, $127 from David in Pennsylvania.
Nice.
You guys are gonna miss these updates. There's less than 2 weeks left now until we're done with the journalism drive. Let me see where we are right now on tytnetwork.com/go. Okay, 1669. I said, can we see 170? I'm sorry, 1.7 yesterday on the show. Can we see it by the end of the hour? Can
you
we
said
do that?
soon.
Yes,
that
that's
could
right.
be today.
And so, guys, again, not a lot of time left. If we get to 1.75, we hire one more. If we get to 2, we hire 2 more reporters. So let's go on that. Greta writes in from on hashtag TYT Live, popping the biggest bottles when Bill O'Reilly gets fired. I don't know if that's Van Susteren or not, but I hear you, Greta. Right there with you, sister. Marissa N says this may be the first time that corporate money greed has led to a decision that's best for America.
Well, Glenn Beck.
Yeah. And by the way, corporations are also into diversity because they want to be able to sell to everybody in the world. So they're actually on our side on a couple of select issues, and oftentimes on gay rights as well. But on everything else, much in it for themselves alone. And on those they are as well. They just happen to benefit.
That worked out okay for a little while.
Okay, Ben Peck writes in, wonder if O'Reilly will use Alex Jones' excuse in court. I was just a performance artist playing a character.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be great.
I'm not going to go into the full thing, but he posted a video responding to everybody gloating about that, where he goes crazy while driving. And I encourage him to continue filming while driving. But anyway, and he's like, it's not fake, it's not an act. I mean, I am an actor. It is an act, but I believe everything. But part of it is, is performance. He had to keep going back and forth because he wants both. He doesn't want to lose the lawsuit, but he desperately wants you to believe that it's real. And so it's driving him crazy the way he drives others crazy.
It's awesome.
Couldn't have happened to a worse guy.
Yeah. I wonder if Bill O'Reilly will use the excuse in court of, no, that wasn't me who sexually harassed those women. It was talking points.
I knew it was going to be.
Right.
The talking point for the day is hot chocolate.
Right. No, now talking point says that her cleavage is hot chocolate. That's literally what he told us. He saw her cleavage and then said that.
Yeah.
Anyway, last one.
Segments are people, my friend.
Bill O'Reilly goes in, Bill O'Reilly goes out. You can't explain that. All right, the Chris Lapaco writes, and people can back engineer the voting machines and see how they work to exploit weakness. Let's see if there were any rushes in Cobb County.
Oh God.
Okay, what's next?
Anyway, now you're gonna get people started on that now. Okay. Last week we learned about a possible plan where the US military, in response to a nuclear weapons test by North Korea, would launch a military strike against North Korea, which sounds like a potential disaster. Now thankfully that didn't happen because they didn't actually test a nuclear weapon. And so we dodged a bullet there. But now we find out about another potential plan, a contingency plan that could also end poorly. The US military is considering shooting down North Korean missile tests as a show of strength to Pyongyang, two sources told The Guardian. So they didn't test a nuclear weapon, they tested a missile, as they have earlier this year and 4 years now. It blew up basically right as they were being in the test. We showed you the cartoon video of it yesterday. And so they say now that they will continue to do those tests. So theoretically, if the US military were to shoot those down as a show of strength, would you consider that a provocation? You just might, but let's go into some of the specifics. One US official said the prospective shoot down strategy would be aimed at occurring after a nuclear test. So let them test the nuclear weapon, but then shoot down the missiles later, with the objective being to signal to Pyongyang that the US can impose military consequences for a step Donald Trump has described as unacceptable. So that is actually taking a step back from the previous plan, just shooting down the missile as opposed to bombing North Korea. So perhaps that's a step in the right direction. However, North Korea's deputy foreign minister told the BBC that they would continue to test missiles on a weekly, monthly, and yearly basis. All-out war would ensue if the US took military action, he said. And former senior Pentagon policy official for Asia under Barack Obama, Abraham Denmark, said, "I would see such an action, shooting down the missiles, as escalatory, but I couldn't guess how Kim Jong-un would interpret it. But I would be concerned he would feel the need to react strongly, as he would not want to appear weak." So it might be a provocation. So what do you think about this? Is this a better alternative, or is this still too likely to result in all-out war?
Yeah, we're headed towards a collision course with North Korea. And to be fair to Donald Trump, we probably were headed in that direction no matter what. And I'll tell you why. And then I'll tell you why it's a disaster if it happens under Trump. Because North Korean officials talk about the Gaddafi example and how Gaddafi negotiated with the Americans to give away his nuclear program. And obviously, as you know, sometime later, he was taken out of a ditch with a pole in his ass and then shot in the head. So now, there was a whole revolution that preceded that. But the European and American allies that had assured Gaddafi that he would remain safe as long as he gave up his nuclear program did not invade him. But as soon as the revolution began, they authorized bombing of his positions and basically helped to take him out. So the North Koreans apparently feel that they have learned a lesson from that, which is never ever give up your nuclear program to the West. And if they have a nuclear program that is getting better and better, and unfortunately it is, that failed test maybe is a testament to our cyber warfare, the latest missile test of theirs. But overall, all sources say that their missile program has been getting much stronger. In fact, General John Hyten from the US said that their February launch test came out of a, quote, out of a place we'd never even seen before, and that we were taken by surprise by it. So with significant advancements and them not wanting to give up their nuclear program under any circumstance, there's no way that the US is going to tolerate a North Korea that could reach America with a nuclear strike, especially the hydrogen bomb, which would be 1,000 times worse than Hiroshima. There's no way we would allow that. So, and it doesn't matter who's in office. Now, we think that they still have another 10 years before they get there, but maybe that's being optimistic, we don't know. And remember, they probably can hit Seoul, South Korea today and kill untold amounts of people, even if it's just the Hiroshima level of atomic bomb that they possess today. So now, if we're on a collision course with North Korea, man, I would work triple overtime to find a way to, again, be able to take out enough of the North Korean leadership and bribe everyone else in North Korean leadership with, look, what do you need? You need $1 million, you need $10 million a head per general, per colonel, per lieutenant to not go to war and to turn the Kim Jong-un over and whoever else you need to turn over? Because it's not like we haven't done that in the past. When we went from the 1950s to the 70s, 80s and beyond, deposing people that were not friendly governments, yes, we often did it through violence, but oftentimes we also went in and bribed everyone around leadership. And that's why it was easier to topple those governments. So we're gonna have to take care of this issue. But if it happens under Trump and we're not patient and we don't set up all the right ways of doing it.
Strategic patience is over, by the way.
Yeah, I know. And so the thing is, by patient, I don't mean punt. And I'm afraid that both Democrats and Republicans in the past have thought, this is too hard a problem. Unlike Trump, they knew it was complicated. And they punted. They didn't solve it on their watch. And politically, trying to solve North Korea on your watch, not a lot of upside and potential disastrous downside, right? So I don't know, to be fair to them, I don't know how much they worked to set up a situation where we could topple the government.
Yeah, and look, it's incredibly complicated. And I know that Trump thinks that in a sentence he can write off all of the efforts of Obama and Clinton. He doesn't even mention George W. Bush, but of course George W. Bush attempted to engage in some ways. And look, to some extent, if they still eventually develop nuclear weapons, it is punting. I would say as long as you can push that off is a good thing, especially if you attempt to, in the very limited case that it might work, bring North Korea into the lowercase League of Nations that we have in the world. And there have been attempts by that. There were attempts in both the 90s and under George W. Bush to attempt to break the huge disconnect between North Korea and the rest of the world. It just didn't work. Now, look, if they were to develop nuclear weapons, that is a disaster. It is not game over because, of course, we have missile defense. In 10 years, we'll have even more advanced missile defense, and we'll have had an additional decade to stage it all over South Korea and Japan and the rest of the region, let alone the west case of the US. But I agree that simply because, and I agree, inevitably there was going to be tensions with North Korea. But this was number 6 perhaps on the list of reasons why Donald Trump could not become president. Because I don't know if there's anyone less qualified to deal with the situation. In the end, it'll probably be Jared Kushner that's put in charge of it. But Donald Trump is not responsible. He cannot handle the situation. I know people have convinced themselves that Hillary Clinton would be exactly the same when it comes to North Korea, or that if she became president, then they've performed this mental jujitsu on themselves where they think instantly we go to nuclear war with Russia. But Donald Trump is an irresponsible guy who can't be trusted with weapons and can't be trusted with dealing with perhaps psychotic dictators like Kim Jong-un.
No.
Especially if he doesn't even know who the guy is, which we're gonna get to in a second.
In this case, the Clinton-Trump comparison is ridiculous.
I see it every day on social media.
Whoever is writing it, even if you're on the left, or you're absolutely, positively wrong. Now, you could call Clinton a warmonger, and in a lot of ways I understand that and made that argument before. But in the case of North Korea, Trump has 2 toxic elements that Clinton didn't have. It's not that I think that Clinton was a peace-loving person and a secret progressive. No, she was a hawk, of course, we know that. But Trump, one, has this need to prove himself, and they keep talking about how they're going to, quote, impose military consequences, right? And he talked tough, and he has to show, when Obama said he was going to draw the line, and he didn't draw the line. When I draw the line, there's going to be consequences. When I say something is unacceptable, which he's already described as unacceptable. Now, Obama and Clinton, they're pragmatists, for better or for worse, and I don't like their kind of pragmatism. But if they thought, all right, well, if I draw the line, millions of people might die, they might rethink it. Yeah. Whereas Trump thinks, no, I gotta prove myself, right? And he never thinks 2 steps ahead.
No.
The fact that he is incredibly stupid is relevant here. And then, of course, the more important part is ego. Kim Jong-un's not gonna show me what to do. I'm gonna show him what to do. But you incompetent buffoon, you don't even know his name, let alone where he's hidden all of his missiles. And that ego will, A, is more likely to cause conflict, and B, way more likely to underestimate the enemy. And the North Koreans are a disaster in everything but weapons.
Yeah.
And they have all those weapons buried in their mountains in places that we don't even know. All they've been preparing for 60 years is all-out war. And so if we blunder into North Korea unprepared, we are going to unleash something that is going to be very hard to undo.
Yeah.
And look, John, you've been reading about the Korean War from back in the day, from 64 years ago. And there is not any amount of bombing you could do of North Korea if you don't get their leaders that they will surrender to. And imagine how many bombs, even conventional bombs, North Korea could unleash on our allies in South Korea and Japan, and the amount of damage that would do to the world economy. And when you have a situation that precarious, we have a buffoon, a child, even in the Yemen strike, completely unprepared at the helm. Oh boy.
Who has said that he himself wants to use nuclear weapons.
Guys, this is look, if we stumble into this, and Trump is far more likely to stumble into it than any president of our lifetimes, it could be an epic
Historic
disaster. If you thought Iraq was bad, wait till North Korea launches all its missiles. Yeah. You think we're gonna take them all out? I hope so. But God help us if we don't.
Yeah, let's briefly drill down on a point that you just made right there. Does Donald Trump know who the leader of North Korea is? That may sound like a ridiculous question to ask, considering that we're engaging in this brinksmanship against them right now. But I want you to watch this video and then tell me if he actually does or not.
Have you ruled out a military strike?
I don't want to telegraph what I'm doing or what I'm thinking. I'm not like other administrations where they say we're going to do this in 4 weeks, and that doesn't work that way. We'll see what happens. I hope things work out well. I hope there's going to be peace. But, you know, they've been talking with this gentleman for a long time. You read Clinton's book. He said, oh, we made such a great peace deal, and it was a joke. You look at different things over the years with President Obama. Everybody has been outplayed. They've all been outplayed by this gentleman, and we'll see what happens. But I just don't telegraph my moves.
So they all talked to this gentleman.
So there's two layers to this. One, he of course does not know Kim Jong-un's name. Now, if you don't know Kim Jong-un's name, I get it, man, that's not your job. Although probably a lot of you do. He's been in the news a lot, right? And you know, we have fun with his name. That's Kim Jong Unbelievable. Maybe they should try that with Trump so he can keep it in his head, right?
The moniker.
Yeah, so Donald Trump, you're the president of the United States. This is not the leader of Mozambique, although it would be great if you knew his name too. Now that you're president.
For the record, I do not.
Okay. And remember, he told us that he was going to know foreign policy so well as soon as he stepped into office that our head was going to spin.
Yeah, no, my head is facing forward right now.
Yes, not remotely spinning. So, okay, you know he doesn't know his name, which is so embarrassing. But
that's fine. That's fine.
Who cares? Yeah, that's the part that's like I can live with it, whatever. But he didn't take any time to figure out the context, the history of North Korea, to know that Kim Jong-un started in 2011. His father was in charge from 94 to 2011, which is some part of the Clinton administration, some part of the Obama administration. So it is not the same gentleman, let alone the fact that
George W. Bush as well. But yeah,
let alone the fact that Kim Il-sung continued until 94, from the end of the Korean War to when he died in 94, which is also part of Bill Clinton's. So it's actually 3 different guys that Clinton and Obama dealt with, not this gentleman.
And it is consequential because yes, it's a family and they do share some things, including the cult of personality and all of that. But their approaches to North Korean society, their priorities in terms of how much money is going to the military and things like that, has been different between the 3. He should probably know. Maybe he doesn't need to know the specifics, but he should probably know that there have been 3 different people that he's lumping into this gentleman.
And Kim Jong-un is young. Has he never seen a picture of him? Did he really think that Kim Jong-un has been in charge since Clinton years?
He was born in 1912.
I mean, just simple, basic elementary stuff. But guys, again, even if you're a Trump supporter, think about it. He is so careless that he didn't even bother to do 1 minute of homework to find out who this gentleman is. Who the leader of North Korea is, what the leader of North Korea, who it used to be, what the context of North Korea is. This guy is talking about, oh, I'm going to show them and there's going to be military consequences and what they're doing is unacceptable. This guy who could start this disastrous war where millions of people could die, he hasn't done 1 minute of homework. Not 1 minute to figure out who the hell the leader of North Korea is. And this buffoon, this orange monstrosity is our president and unfortunately the most powerful man on earth.
I don't want to see military consequences until he's proven that there have been educational consequences, where when you go to the brink of war with a country, you then feel obligated to learn just a little bit about its history and its leadership. Show us that first.
We have built the greatest military known to man. Whether you like it or you don't like it, it is by far the most potent military in the history of the planet. And we've now handed it over to a guy who doesn't care to do a single minute of research to find out who our adversary is. I mean, if you're conservative, isn't that deeply embarrassing? Aren't you supposed to study your adversary? Aren't you guys supposed to be tough guys who know about military and war and consequences? And this ignoramus doesn't even bother to figure out who the leader of this country is that he is threatening all-out war with. Oh, yeah. It's worse than you thought. It's even worse than I thought.
Yeah. Embarrassing.
Okay, we got to take a quick break.
Yeah.
When we come back, we have more for you guys, including Ivanka's horrific conflict of interest issues as she sits next to Chinese leaders making deals. Ridiculous. We'll explain when we come back.
We talk about TYT Army being so strong. Usually they help us run our show. Now they're gonna help us run the country.
Like this. It's time that we reclaim democracy for the people.
We had a huge victory for Wolfpack.
When Lincoln said this was a country by, of, and for, he said of the people, not of corporations.
Our representatives don't represent us. Whoa, democracy!
United!
We are!
We are!
Too strong! There's thousands of volunteers, and you could be among them.
With Wolfpack, the mission is so clear.
Money is killing our democracy.
96% of Americans want it.
When you get the power back, oh, that feels good. This is just the beginning. Let's go get them, man. Up and at them. Knock, knock. We're coming for them! Wolf-pack.com.
Welcome back to TYT Sports. Jason and Francis here. This is where everybody has to listen. Welcome to TYT Sports, everybody. I am your host, Francis Maxwell. Jason here. Welcome to TYT Sports. Turks and Jerks. TYT Sports.
Steph Curry signed with Under Armour.
Tom Brady's mad, by the way.
Do you hear me? Back on TYT Sports!
Actually, leave a link in the description box below instead of lying about leaving a link in the description box below.
Editor, throw up another picture of the UK bacon. And another. And in fact, throw in another one.
Let me see your belly.
Beast mode.
All right, we got a graphic incoming. Putting up 3, 2, 1. All right, video next. And next video. And power panel. And dropping it.
Nerds rule the world. Nerds rule the world. Nerds rule the world. Nerds rule the world.
Welcome to the nerd life.
Welcome to Nerd Alert, everyone. We have an exciting show for you this week.
Glad to communicate with all the nerds out there.
What's beautiful about geeks is geeks are open to everybody. That's the thing. It's like, so you got your thing, I got my thing. It's like, and if you're not, then you're a bad geek.
Why did you choose Battlestar Galactica? Because it's awesome? No kidding. The floor is not lava. Yoshi!
My nightmare! And there's one very special characteristic that many men have been interested in. Penis size. What's up, friend?
Yeah, I know that curve.
And that movie is the Valentine's Day romantic classic, Deadpool.
Whoa, wait a second, Doc. You mean to tell me that this is a nerd alert? That's right, Marty. We've entered a nerd alert.
Isn't that right? How can you improve pizza? With math, of course.
If we spilled goldfish crackers on the floor and we didn't want to clean them up, so we thought that if we stomped on them an infinite amount of times, they would mathematically cease to exist.
We are ready for a Wonder Woman movie. Oh, wait, no, let me correct myself. We were ready for a Wonder Woman movie years ago.
I'm Joss Whedon, and you're watching Nerd Alert.
Back on a Young Turks. Let me read donor names again for tytnetwork.com/go. $15 from Stan in Colorado, 127 from Kathy in North Carolina, and 127 from Alex in Florida. You can now get the House TYT T-shirt, Game of Thrones style, if you give $127. Let me see where we are right now. Jesus. Oh, Jesus. Come on, let's get to 1670. Before the, I was saying 1.7. No, I meant 1.670 by the end of the hour. Okay, Tim Joyce writes in, he doesn't telegraph his moves because he has no idea what he's going to do next. Dwayne makes a good point too. He doesn't telegraph his moves except all the time on Twitter.
Yeah, that's true.
Jeremy Varner.
If you can make sense of his tweets, I guess.
Yeah. Jeremy Varner writes in, nut jobs with bad hair and inferiority complexes who make up bullshit to compensate for their flaws. You'd think they'd be friends. And finally, Riley Grady says, 2 weak men trying not to appear weak has disaster written all over it.
I think right now there's a 5% chance of nuclear war, 10% chance that Kim Jong-un ends up at Mar-a-Lago. And by the way, from everything I've read, Kim Jong-un would love the cake.
Tremendous. Okay,
let's jump back into it. Ivanka is one of the Trump children who's supposed to be on the government side of things, with the various family businesses being controlled by trusts and the Trump sons. And so because she's on the government side, that's what makes certain coincidences a little bit hard to explain, like what happened on April 6th when 3 new Ivanka Trump brand trademarks were approved in China on the same day she and husband Jared Kushner sat next to Chinese President Xi Jinping at a Mar-a-Lago state dinner, which was apparently a lovely occasion. We don't know what kind of cake they had, but we do know that during the meetings, her daughter, 5-year-old Arabella, stood in a gilded room and sang a traditional Chinese song in Mandarin for China's president, which sounds lovely. And so it was a nice close occasion where they got to know each other better and didn't talk business, and yet she got these 3 monopoly trademarks to sell different types of products in China. Now, the week of that summit, and this is interesting, 3.4 tons of her handbags, wallets, and blouses arrived in the US from Hong Kong and Shanghai. You know they're high quality when they're measured by the ton. US imports of her merchandise grew an estimated 40% in the first quarter of this year, and this isn't the first meeting with the Chinese government. And so that seems a little bit odd, especially because her attorney earlier said Ivanka will not weigh in on business strategy, marketing issues, or the commercial terms of agreements. She's retained authority to direct the trustees to terminate agreements that she determines create a conflict of interest or the appearance of one. So she could terminate this conflict of interest, but chooses not to. Now bear in mind, as those 3.4 tons in just a week are coming in, her father, Donald Trump, signed the Buy American, Hire American executive order today. So you should buy American, just not if you're buying Ivanka Trump's merchandise, because that's made in China.
It's unbelievable. All right, so let's break down.
It's swampy, I would say.
Yeah, to say the least. Let's break down all the things that are happening here. So first off, on the conflict of interest, Trump has, Ivanka Trump that is, has shifted her brand's assets to, don't worry, a family-run trust valued at more than $50 million. Now, if it's a family-run trust, that means you still have the money and you still have someone within your family running it that you can communicate to any day. And you know exactly how many patents you applied to. I know how many patents you applied to and how many got accepted by China, because it's all in the public. So you have all of this information. And so what part is you recusing yourself from anything? It isn't. You're sitting right next to the leader of China. He's approving your trademark. He's like texting in, approve 3 more trademarks for Ivanka, right? Yeah. And they say, no. Now, Ivanka does get to do business with China, and in her official capacity in the government, she will recuse herself if there is a conflict of interest specifically related to not trade, that's too broad, not business, that's too broad, if they start talking about clothing. Really?
What about handbags? What about handbags?
So if you think the Chinese leader is that unsophisticated, well, our leader is that unsophisticated, but their leader is not, right? That he is going to be like, now Ivanka, I'll give you 10% off on the goods that you're importing in from China. No, he's not going to say that.
No, of course
he's
not.
going to say,
it's just the understanding. He knows now that he can give you certain things with the understanding that you will give him something back. So it's bad enough that she gets these patents. We have no idea if she deserves them, if there's merit, whatever. But God knows what we're going to give them back for it. I guarantee you this, you're not going to profit from it. You're not going to benefit from it. Maybe someone in China will benefit from it, and that's great for them. But that's not how our government, it's the same thing to me now. It's Freudian slip. That's not how our government is supposed to function. But that's every day. We don't get to cover all these stories, but every day there's more stories about how Ivanka Trump and Donald Trump and Jared Kushner are, and the sons as well, since they're getting sent on taxpayer-funded trips to the UAE and South America, they're benefiting from the fact that they're in government. That is not how the system is supposed to function.
Guys, I mean, doesn't it bother you? Again, look, I know if you're a liberal or progressive, it bothers you, but if you're a conservative, that they said that you were going to hire American. He's signing an executive order now saying, we hire American and we build in America. And then he's like, not me, you, not me, doesn't apply to me. I mean, look, we know that he had all of his stuff made in China as he was running for president. He's like, I'm just a good businessman. Well, then why isn't everybody else a good businessman? Why can't they build in China like you do, right? But you excuse it somehow because, he's running for president, but he isn't president yet. He's president now. And on the day that he's saying, yeah, you got to make it in America, his daughter's like, here, take 3.4 tons butter from China, rub it in your face. Rules don't apply to us. We're rich, we're the elite.
Yeah.
And we've rebuilt the swamp, and we were messing with you the whole time. And you were stupid enough to believe it. We don't believe a word that we're saying. How can you justify it? You're really gonna sit there if you're a right-wing troll and you're gonna go, I love it when they break the rules. Buy American, hire American, make it in America, unless you're the Trumps.
Yeah.
Are you really that pathetic?
Yeah. You might say, they're rich, they're gonna make a little bit of money, I don't care as long as they're doing what they said they do. He also said he was gonna label China as a currency manipulator. Now he says he's not going to. He says it's to get them to help with North Korea, but how do you know it's not trademark related? She got 3, he got 35 a month ago. How do you know that that's not driving it? And you wanted them to be labeled as a currency manipulator, Trump voter, but all of a sudden, maybe don't care so much because you have to look the other way because he is your dear leader.
Now look, he might be doing that partly because of North Korea, which would be good, okay? Or he might be doing it because Jared Kushner was just about to do a $4 billion deal with a Chinese company in New York for a building he needed to unload. He might be doing it because they just had trademarks approved by the Chinese government. And by the way, one other part of this story, remember when Kellyanne Conway said, go buy Ivanka's stuff and there was that controversy around it? Do you know that her sales spiked 771% in February after that comment? And then in March, it was sustained, not at that level, but still spiked above last year, 262%. So you think all this stuff is not good for business? You know what Ivanka said about this whole controversy? She's like, please, I do declare. My business probably would have been better off if I didn't have to go spend my time in Washington. Really, it would have been better off than a 771% increase in business because you turned the government into your marketing company? None of this is for your benefit or our benefit. It's all for the Trump family's benefit. So if you're comfortable with that and you don't mind them robbing you blind and selling our national interests out, have at it, Hoss. But I think a lot of us are very, very uncomfortable with it.
Yeah.
Okay, we gotta go. We got a great second hour coming up for you guys, including another Ivanka story and a hijab story. Is it mandatory? Is it not? Et cetera. So everybody check out youtube.com/think tank. And speaking of think tank, Hannah Cranston will be on in the next hour.
What do you know?
I don't know. We'll be right back.
We just got nominated for another Webby. Anyway.
I have the real thing.
All right, so we got nominated for Film and Video News and Politics series. And so the only way that we win this, Webby, is if you guys vote, okay? And the great thing is you can vote more than once. You can vote every day. Voter fraud is okay in this case. So vote every single day until April 20th. That's the last day that you can vote. And as long as we get enough votes, we will win this Webby, and we really, really hope we can do it. But again, we can't do it without you. So if you do love us, if you do support the show, please take the time to cast your vote in favor of TYT.
This is exactly why we say the TYT army is too strong.
Too strong.
So let's show them how it's done. Let's crush the competition so that at the end we can go
They're like, no, we don't. Now we don't want you guys to win.
I know, right? That was enough of that. All right, vote every day. Let's crush them. Let's win again. You guys are the best. The real resistance is fighting against Trump and the establishment. Help us get investigative reporters that are going to investigate both of them. TYTnetwork.com/go. Whoa, Nelly, let me tell you about aspiration.com. So they're a sponsor of ours. I love it because we're trying to find sponsors that match us and you guys, and they're perfect for that. They're progressive, they're a financial firm, and if you're tired of all those banks, it's time to debank and go to a financial firm like aspiration.com. You're asking, hey, Cenk, why is that? Well, don't worry, I'm about to tell you. Okay, 100% fossil fuel-free banking and investments, so hashtag no dapple. So if you're worried about your bank doing that, they don't do that at all. This is amazing. Everybody I tell this to, they're like, no. Up to 1% annual interest on your checking account.
How is that?
How's that possible?
I don't know, but sold.
Aspiration.com. That's why they have a.
You can't even get a CD, okay? Certificate of deposit. You can't even get a certificate of deposit with an interest rate like that.
I know. I was talking to my dad about it. I think you should go. Okay, that's why they have a wait list.
Yeah.
You can skip the wait list. I know we're a little exclusive here. Now all of a sudden the TYT audience is the elites. You can go to the head of the line by going to aspiration.com/TYT, and you don't have to wait on the wait list. There's free access to ATMs all across the world. There's no monthly service fee. I know it just gets better, but 10% of their revenue goes to charity. I mean, it doesn't get any more lib than this, and no funding of political campaigns or industry lobbying. So if you were looking for a progressive place to put your money, I think we've got your answer for you, aspiration.com.
I'm super excited because we have different levels of members. They pay $10 a month, but there are some members that pay a little more. Our executive producers, for instance. My favorite thing about executive producers is that we have quarterly calls with them. I love that I'm getting a little transparency and I'm knowing what you guys like and dislike, ideas on how to improve the show, topics that maybe we haven't heard of yet and you really want us to cover. We have so much respect for you because of the fact that you keep us independent and allow us to be uncensored, unfiltered, without worrying about corporate sponsors breathing down our necks and telling us what we can and can't say. So if you want to be a member, obviously no pressure. You can go ahead and join by going to tytnetwork.com/join. I'm gonna ask some uncomfortable questions. The first topic that I said that we would discuss a little more is masturbation.
And then I was swimming in a hazelnut river.
Are you sure you're not doing mushrooms? Oh my God, I can achieve an orgasm by myself.
Fuck that, I am gonna talk about it because there should be no shame around. I think a lot about death because I love life.
That openness led to amazing sex.
And I keep saying to everybody, oh, I gotta go call my wife. I figured that was a good excuse and people can't say, hey, don't call your wife. I'm gonna release bliss.
It's so weird because at that moment I felt bliss and it smelled like lavender.
At the end, you get to go check, nice job. If you're a member of the Young Turks, you too will rock the world.
Turks, second hour. Hannah Cranston from Think Tank, Francis Maxwell from TYT Sports. Now, it's always a shame when Anna's away, of course, but on the upside, I love doing the show with more of you guys. And it's great to have the whole network represented. So God bless, welcome.
Nice, thank you.
Excited to be here, yeah.
We seem to always do a panel together, us three.
I know.
Usually gets a little fiery, I like it.
You think it's going to get fiery today?
I don't know. I don't know if we'll clash on it, Hannah. We'll see.
Okay, looking forward to it already. All right, let me tell you, contributed to the journalism drive in the last hour, $27 from Rena in Florida, $100 from Joanne in Delaware, and $127 from Marcia in New Hampshire. Did we get to 1.670? Just let me see it. Here it comes. No. Okay, no, but we're almost. Okay. Well, it says it right there. tytnetwork.com/go. Okay, Mandy writes in, Trump is Joffrey, Ivanka is Cersei. She's pulling a lot more strings than we think. Well, perhaps, interesting. And Kicking It says, all this happening, I tend to wonder, where are the Democrats? We need to move aside and let the unsilent minority take over. So justicedemocrats.com, those are Democrats who are actually fighting back. There's gonna be a lot of fun, exciting announcements coming from Justice Democrats soon. Ooh, drums. And I am going to be making a speech / rally in Washington, D.C.
Nice.
That's on April 30th, that's right after the White House Correspondents' Dinner. We're doing a Watchdog Correspondents' Dinner right across the street from that dinner. But if you want to get information on where the rally / speech is and when it is, you could do one of two things. One is text TYT, obviously the letters TYT, to 228466, or you can go to tytnetwork.com/get updates. And either way, we'll let you know exactly where and when that is going to be in Washington, and we'd love to see you there. All right, rock and roll. Hannah, what do you got next for us?
All right. So a new report out of Harvard University reveals a pretty troubling fate for a lot of the unaccompanied child refugees from Syria, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. Now, for these child migrants who end up in Greece, it appears as though they are being forced to sell their bodies in order to afford the journey to the UK and other European countries. Now, the report found that the average price of a sexual transaction with a child is about 15 euros or about £12.50, okay? So it costs to go from Greece to the UK thousands and thousands of euros. So most of the time, this isn't even enough to get them where they need to go to pay the smugglers to make the journey, all right? Now, the largest group of children selling sex are Afghani boys, along with Syrians, Iraqis, and Iranians. The majority of customers are older men aged 35 and over. Now, the report also found that some of the children selling sex become addicted to drugs, making it even less likely that they will be able to afford to pay smugglers and leave Greece to continue with their journeys. Further, it also identifies that rape and other forms of sexual assault of young children in the camps, an increase in child marriage and blackmail of some children who have been abused and had humiliating photos taken of them by mafia gangs who blackmail them by threatening to send the photos to unaccompanied children's families back home. So obviously, this is a really sad situation. It's sad, I mean, with the refugee crisis and these kids, a lot of the times we're coming over, sent by their parents from these war-torn countries to find a better life, and they're here, they're hoping to get to European countries, and as we know, a lot of the European countries sort of closed their borders last year, and so they got stuck in Greece after coming over through Turkey, and they estimate that there's about 2,300 unaccompanied minors in Greece at the moment right now who are, don't really have a place to go, and they don't have translators, and they don't have a lot of other sort of easier ways that could help them sort of make the transition, hopefully, to other countries. And so unfortunately, they have been put in this position where they are selling sex to make money. And it's really sad.
Yeah.
So this is one of the most tragic stories there is about the refugee crisis. And as we have people fear-mongering around Syria, and especially as we have someone saying that he cares so much about the beautiful babies that he's willing to bomb Assad's government. We still have that same person here in the US not willing to take in any Syrian refugees. So whether they're beautiful babies or not, as Trump calls them, he's like, if they're gassed, then we'll bomb people. Will we take them in? No, don't care. You hear this story, I mean, what kind of a person doesn't think this is heartbreaking?
Yeah. Right.
And it's not just Syrians, it is Afghans, Iraqis, Iranians, and Syrians overall. But very few have been placed into Europe, 191 last year. And that's it, 191. I mean, some numbers have it at over 5,000 unaccompanied kids. And it takes thousands of dollars to get to the countries if they want to go in through the ways that Hannah described. At, I mean, $12 and, or 12 pounds, I should say, 12 and a half pounds. I mean, that's a disaster. It's not gonna work. They're not even gonna get there. And now some of them are getting hooked on drugs. I mean, this is what they came to the West for. We gotta find a way to help them.
And there is a solution. Real quick, I just want to give you guys a little bit of background. So for the Home Office, which is the immigration office in the UK, they actually have this Doves Amendment, which would allow the UK to bring in a bunch of unaccompanied minors and help them rehabilitate within the region. And unfortunately, they actually ended the Doves scheme. It was supposed to take in about 3,000, which would essentially take all these kids. They estimate there's about 2,300, which would allow all these children to come in. And they stopped it after taking only 350 children.
Yeah,
which is really sad.
The UK definitely does a problem right there. And guys, you need to understand in looking at some of the research, like European countries, there was an article that I'm citing here from The Guardian last year, have carried out 8% of the promised refugee relocations that they were going to say. And listen here, these are the two countries that basically took in the most refugees coming in after this agreement was Malta and Finland. If you're not from Europe, let me just describe. Both of those countries are tiny. Tiny in comparison to some of the biggest. They actually met their resettling obligations in comparison to all the bigger countries that actually agreed upon this previously, where European countries accepted less than 10% of the 160,000 refugees they promised to move to safety from unsanitary and cramped camps in Italy and Greece, as we're talking about here. And as you mentioned, this is the unfortunate repercussions of not following through on those obligations, is that these desperate people are going to try and find ways to find some sort of sanctuary to move to. And it's such a horrendous story, and it goes hand in hand with the hypocrisy that we see on this side of the pond. Now, again, I'm not going to turn around and say that the United States is at fault for what's going on here. There's plenty of other countries that have to be opening their borders as well and allowing people who are closer by to come in and try and find some safety. But at the same time, when Donald Trump is going in and bombing these areas, the first thing I tweeted out after is, if you're going to bomb them based on the reasoning that these beautiful babies were facing an assault, that's so hypocritical if you're literally not going to open up your borders and you have stated that you're not willing to let any of them in. None of them. That is the epitome of hypocrisy. So the United States has such a powerful way of potentially leading charge and opening up their borders and stating that we will accept more Syrian refugees. And in the UK, Theresa May, who's following hand in hand behind Donald Trump, she might follow suit as well and be more welcoming to open up their borders. But it is a result of these European countries not staying true to what they said they were going to do when it came to these relocations.
Now, I'm generally an optimist, but man, this story challenges your optimism about the world. Because not only are we not allowing these poor people, and we never learn from history. Same thing, the St. Louis came to the shores of America during the Holocaust, and we wouldn't take them in. At least 25% of the people on that ship were then sent to concentration camps and murdered. And here we are again, and we've got mass killings in Syria, and we're not taking people in, just like in the past. And we say that ISIS is like the Nazis. We say that ISIS is the worst of the worst, let alone what Assad has done with chemical weapons. And we still won't take the victims in. And then the second part that's super depressing is most of the customers are men over the age of 35. So they're buying generally young boys, and knowing the horrible situation they're in, they look at that and think, not how can I help, but how can I take advantage for my prurient interests? It is beyond gross.
Yeah. And the unfortunate thing is to try and bring these stories to light and show some more information as to ways that other people can help and other countries can help, is it takes drastic stories like this or people dying trying to get across the seas. Like we mentioned last year, like it's stated here in The Guardian as well, that the number of lives lost in the agency since this agreement I'm mentioning took effect, is that it fell substantially from 1,125 2015, 2016 to 70 the following year. But then they're going to try and find other methods to try and get out of this darkness, to try and get out of this horrendous situation. So it's on those countries who have agreed to this system, agreed to this plan, to stay true to it. You can't be relying on small countries like Malta and Finland, who are only the countries that are hitting their obligations.
Yeah.
It's absurd.
Yeah, but I think you make a good point in that, like, I think it sometimes, unfortunately, there's stories like this when you hear about the atrocities that are happening and you see the picture of the little boy on the sand and things like that, that gets people to move. So far, just The Guardian has reported this story. Hopefully more outlets will report this story as well. And as horrific as it is, hopefully it will get people to move and it will get people activated. Yeah. All right, moving on. A white nationalist and Trump supporter that was accused of assaulting a young African-American protester at a Trump rally in Kentucky back during his campaign is now flipping the script, okay? He is actually trying to sue Trump, saying that Trump incited violence, okay? He incited the violence that this man committed. All right, so I know that sounds very confusing, but I'm gonna get into it. So Matthew Hembach is a leader of the white supremacist Traditionalist Youth Network and a vocal Trump supporter. He was a vocal Trump supporter during the campaign. So there's actually video of him assaulting this young African-American woman. So let's take a look at that.
Get out. You know, in the old days, which isn't so long ago.
So as you can see in the video, Matthew is the one with the red MAGA hat, all right? And he's pushing this woman out, and he's saying that the fact that Trump said, get out of here, multiple times was the reason that he assaulted this woman. And so Trump should be to blame because now he is facing some legal ramifications for doing this. Now, these protesters who were kicked out filed civil assault and battery claims against Hembach and 2 other Trump supporters and accused Trump of inciting his supporters. Now, Matthew Hembach, who's actually serving as his own representation for this lawsuit, claims in his federal court filing that he acted pursuant to the directives and requests of Donald J. Trump and Donald J. Trump for president, and that if he's found liable for damages, any liability must be shifted to one or both of them. Now I want to read a few other things from his claims because it's quite humorous actually. So he denies physically assaulting any of these protesters, but he also levies blame at the protesters, writing that they provoked a response. Okay, by trying to disrupt a free assembly and campaign event to infringe rights of the defendants and other attendees to freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom to vote, and other constitutional rights. Presumably, they also have freedom of speech, but apparently he forgot to mention that here. Now he writes that he acted, if at all, in self-defense. Okay,
you just saw the video.
As well as in reasonable defense of others, while also contending that he was acting under Trump's instruction. Now, my favorite piece of this, and I'm going to read this out to you guys, is that he talks about how Trump is a world-famous businessman, okay, who relies on various professionals, including attorneys. So the fact that he said anything to get them out of here, whatever, he was acting under that information. And so he had to accept the knowledge of such a world famous businessman.
Yep. Oh, well, of course.
Yes, yes.
So many things that I love about this story. So first of all, it doesn't matter if you're right wing or left wing. You don't have the right to push people around at rallies, even if they're disrupting the rallies. You wait for the authorities, and the authorities can remove the person if they're trespassing, okay? So it's no defense to say, oh, I don't know, she was also saying things. It's just the worst defense in the world. So I love that this white nationalist is defending himself because he's an idiot and he's gonna get himself in further trouble. So second of all, you saw the assault right there in the video. To say that, I don't know, she was bothering me is not a legal defense. Or that she was speaking next to me is not a legal defense for assault.
Right.
And then he goes on to basically explain that she had it coming, and he kind of liked that he did it, and that Trump made him do it.
Yeah.
Okay. But he's saying, in case I owe money, though, world-class businessman Donald Trump should pay for it. He to me, and it's absurd, it's preposterous, he's an idiot. But there is a tiny bit of validity to the claim. As you watch that video, he's certainly liable as well. It's not like, and it's so funny. They always say, oh, liberals like to be victims and stuff. but I thought personal responsibility and all that. Did you or didn't you do it? You did do it, right? So why don't you take personal responsibility for what you did?
Right.
We can see you doing it right there, right? Now you can see him mouthing "get out," but as we ran the video with audio the first time around, then you heard a giant "get out." That wasn't Heimbach. No. That was Donald Trump. So he was instructing people to get him out. And then we cut it, but he went on to say, and they made a famous clip about this. In the old days, they used to take him out in stretchers, he said. Now, when you tell the crowd that, and they want to go back to the old days, and you have on the hat, "Make America Great Again," right?
Yeah.
What are you telling them to do?
I'm split on this. I hear what you're saying. The only reason that I have my reservations as to say that Donald Trump has influence on this. Of course, like Donald Trump's, the America that he is pushing forward today is going to encourage people to act in a certain way more so than anything else. But particularly when I do videos talking about Black Lives Matter and the message that it's been put across and what I feel is such a positive message to put across in America today, many people will see an act of atrocity and they'll often place that with Black Lives Matter, and they'll say that they caused that. That was their result. Like what they are standing for meant that the person who was going to come out and commit such an atrocity, they need to take blame for that because that's something they've infused. When no, it's not. Like I just feel like you can commit an atrocity and you can put it towards anything. You could go out in the middle of the street and commit something completely awful and say I'm an ISIS member, and people would say you're part of ISIS. So I don't like to say that people who are out there committing these acts of evil and proclaiming that Donald Trump is responsible for it is because of Donald Trump. Like this guy, specifically in this example, was going to be an idiot regardless. He had that evil within him. He was, as we mentioned there, part of a white nationalist group and has pushed forward these prejudices. The fact that Donald Trump was being aggressive in his notion might have played a role in that, but I don't want to take any blame away from this imbecile. I want it to specifically be on him. He deserves the punishment for being a racist. That's it. He deserves the punishment. I don't want to sugarcoat it any other way. The same way that if someone goes out and kills a police officer and people try to attest it as a Black Lives Matter shooting, no, it's not. That's an evil individual committing an atrocity. Don't try and deflect it away from the individual.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I agree with you on that. I don't think that Donald Trump is directly responsible for this case, but I do think this illustrates sort of this culture of no accountability. I mean, that is being exemplified right now in the highest seat in the entire country. He doesn't, it doesn't hold himself accountable for anything, and so this guy is just sort of copying that sort of, it's not my fault, it's his fault because he told me to do it. And like, just because somebody tells you to do something doesn't mean you have to do it. You still have human agency. And so you have to be responsible for your actions.
Yeah. Well, we've all heard our mom say, just because somebody else is jumping off a bridge doesn't mean you should jump off a bridge. Yeah. All that is true, but Trump went further. In those rallies, he said, hey, if you do something and they sue you, I'll pay for it. He literally said that. So I think it's interesting to, if I was a judge, I would hear it out. I'm not saying I know exactly how I would rule. It would depend on the facts of the case and the particular laws of that state. But it's worth considering. Now, don't get me wrong, it doesn't take any responsibility away from Heimbach, and you could find both responsible. And to Francis' point about what a racist he is, he once disturbed a conservative conference, CPAC, with his friend Scott Terry. And they got an interview with, in a fight with other conservatives. And when one of the conservatives said that, that it's okay, he forgave his slave masters, presumably an African American. This guy's friend, Heimbach's friend Terry said, forgive him for what? Giving him shelter and food? So this is the mindset. Like they don't like black people, and there's a black person, and I don't know that he did it right.
Yeah, double whammy.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter that she's black in terms of the law because assault is assault. Right. I don't know that rises to a hate crime, but clearly you have assault there. Clearly there should be consequences for that. There should have been criminal consequences, let alone civil consequences. But in the civil case, both Trump and Heimbach could pay if they're both responsible.
So my question to you then is, do you feel that when that starts to become somewhat of the narrative in this story, do you not feel that we're moving into murky territory, a territory that I frankly despise when it comes to acts of atrocity? And it's usually the right wing that are pushing this for the left. If someone goes out and kills or commits an atrocity in the name of Black Lives Matter, then all of a sudden Black Lives Matter is responsible for that. Do you see a similarity there? And that's often what the right wing pushes forward.
Yeah, no, but it's a little different, right? So, fair point, Francis. So, if you say, hey, Sean Hannity made me do it, well, no, that's too removed. Sean Hannity wasn't at that rally, and Sean Hannity might generally encourage you to do X, Y, or Z, but he didn't make you push that woman, and I can't stand anything Sean Hannity says, et cetera. But Trump was at the rally directing his supporters, and he said, get out. In other rallies, and this is why it's an interesting court case, in other rallies, he said to commit acts of violence and that he would pay for it if you got sued. He literally said it, right? That's why I think it's different. If somebody who was an official leader of Black Lives Matter, which has never happened, right, said go out and kick that guy's ass and I'll pay for it if you get sued, then I would say, yeah, that's an interesting court case.
Well, let's look
right,
at
but
this.
they haven't.
Let's look at this even more broadly, right? Because this was candidate Trump who's saying this, right? And so this guy is just sort of like going with the flow, thinking that he's gonna be protected by this famous businessman. Now we have President Trump. Now, if he goes out and says things like, hey, I'll protect you under the law if you do X, Y, Z, if you incite violence, if you do some sort of act of bigotry, whatever it may be, I mean, people will be, moved to act on that, and that's really frightening when you see how willing people. If he really felt that Donald Trump was giving him permission to do this as just a candidate, how scary is that? What Donald Trump could potentially say as a president?
Yeah, I agree completely, and that's why I was just kind of posing the question out of curiosity. Because every time I will post a video on Facebook condemning police brutality, like a recent video, then most people will come back and specifically say, oh, well, Black Lives Matter is pushing forward this narrative that causes this person to do this. And I'm always coming to the defense of something like that. And I feel that if you attest every act of atrocity that's committed with a Donald Trump narrative behind it, then it starts to remove accountability away from the actual person itself. And that
Yeah,
the
but
person
we're not doing that.
I feel that he's doing that, and I feel like he becomes. You said that he becomes more motivated to commit it because Trump is saying this and these things, and I feel like more people will become more motivated if it becomes a narrative that, okay, you might actually get away with committing this bullshit and these acts of horror because Donald Trump has said things in the past that might allow you to. So they might feel more inclined to go out and do it. I just want to make sure that we're not moving into that murky territory and the individuals need to be held for their individual acts.
Let's hope that this judge holds him accountable for this awful action.
All right, we're gonna take a quick break here, guys. When we come back, you see Ivanka in the news a lot, and there's this like theme that you hear from the mainstream media that she's actually popular with young people or with women. Is she? Well, we're gonna find out when we return.
What a tease.
TYT is unique in a lot of ways.
I'm gonna ask some uncomfortable questions.
I feel like I missed
out.
So what is going on?
If I don't eat, my head's gonna explode.
As I take my shirt off, just goes, is that your body?
Now we move to inappropriate story number 2.
I just never felt guilty about masturbation.
It's amazing.
I could take partial credit for opening up your sexuality.
I was the kid in the pool with the shirt off. Let's just call it what it is. I was that kid.
Well, you deal with the bitch side of it, right? But you're my boss, so that's what happens.
I think we're more likely to win. They do see it from a frame of the rich and the powerful, and they don't realize that.
The last time that happened, we elected Abraham Lincoln.
I don't know, wouldn't it be wonderful if we unfucked the world?
You and I are a disaster.
Don't stereotype all cops, don't stereotype all anything.
Blowing up like Dave Kohler on Twitter.
That's pretty good progress.
I didn't know you could leave positive comments.
It's a very TYT thing. I'll tell you a whole bunch of depressing stuff so that at the end I can give you hope. Winning is, in terms of change and positive change, is not just possible, it's inevitable.
Great time to be alive.
Let's burn this mother down, huh? Is that what you're saying?
Fuck it, let's go do it. And that's why I keep thanking you guys for being members. Because together, we got their attention.
Thanks for tuning in, and as always, stay strong.
Today is truly a historic day with the Supreme Court decision that makes same-sex marriage legal nationwide.
So this is one of those days in American history, it doesn't come along that often, where we have expanded the circle of liberty.
Look, all we try to do on this show, okay, is to give you perspectives, right? So you can get a better understanding.
We need to change our mentality and understand why these people are trying to leave their own countries and everything that they've known, everything that they've built.
Yeah.
It's not to come here and harm you.
Anytime you force someone like they did in Arizona to carry their paperwork, it's to remind them every day that they do not belong in your society.
Now that is the sound of fascism beginning here in America.
Doesn't that scare you? Don't you see history repeating itself? That xenophobia and faux populism to get people worked up to attack outsiders.
That is violent rhetoric, and your violent rhetoric translates to violent actions. If you don't get that, well, you're either in denial or you know it's true and you just don't want to admit it.
What's the message we're sending to the rest of the world? I mean, give us your poor, you're tired, and we will greatly mistreat them under horrible conditions where some of them will die. That's not what the Statue of Liberty says.
If you asked me to come up with something insulting to Latinos, I couldn't have done anything like this. I wouldn't have thought to insult their grandkids.
Yeah. 2/3 of the people shot when they're unarmed were blacks and Latinos. That means they were wrong. They're like, who cares? Shoot them, shoot them, shoot them, shoot them.
Look, my dad was born in Syria. My dad could have stayed in Syria and he could have been a victim of all this, right? And the thought of the United States saying no to Syrian victims, I don't know, it makes me incredibly emotional and incredibly angry because I think it goes against what this country's about.
The fighters, the warriors, the ones who go the extra mile, in this case literally, to provide for their family and to look for that American dream. And they shouldn't be forced to live in an American nightmare.
Can we eat in here?
Back on the Young Turks, a couple of quick tweets for you guys. Left Librarian says, Trump supporters in a nutshell, quote, I'm not responsible for anything ever, which is what they'll be soon saying about their vote for Trump. Ray for Madness says, America never takes responsibility for its actions. Why would we expect individual Americans to do so? It's learned behavior, which is exactly what you guys were worried about. All right, let's go to our people that have donated to the journalism campaign here. Shreyans from New York at $50. Theodore from Florida for 127, and 127 from Jacqueline in California. You guys remember, you can get the House TYT t-shirts now with our sigil on them. Hey, look at that. 1.671.
Wow.
We were trying to get to 1.67 by the end of the last hour, and we kind of did. In fact, we went a little over. So stop now. No, I'm kidding. Keep going. We have less than 2 weeks left now, and then this campaign will be over forever. So let's try to hire as many people as we can before it's over. That's tytnetwork.com/go. You're gonna miss me saying that. Okay, and now one more thing for you guys. Today in the post game, we're gonna talk about, we talked about the Korean War in the first hour. I will tell you an awesome story of my physics teacher in high school who served in the Korean War.
Oh.
Okay, and old war stories, also from World War II a little bit too. And then I had a conversation with my son about if he wanted to do what I do. and what his answer was.
Oh, I'm so excited.
He's 6 years old.
Little pro.
Yeah.
Love it.
So that's for the members. Become a member at tytnetwork.com/join. All right, what's next, Hannah?
It turns out that young women in America aren't sipping the complicit Kool-Aid and actually have a pretty unfavorable view of the first daughter Ivanka Trump. Now, in a recent Survey Monkey poll, they found that only 21% of young women 18 to 24 have a favorable view of Ivanka. So let's look at this age breakdown. So as you can see on the far left, that's favorable. Then 52% have an unfavorable view of her. 26% don't know enough to say, and 2% no response. And then her favorability actually increases as women get older, which is really interesting. And I want to come back to this in a second, but first I want to look at the male breakdown, because men actually have a much more favorable view of Ivanka. As you can see, it sort of increases there. And then going back to young women, 18 to 24, there's a partisan breakdown here. Republican women, 67% favorable, 17% unfavorable, and then 9% favorable for Democrats and 73% unfavorable there as well. And this is actually really important, right? Because I think Ivanka is sort of held accountable for a lot of being like the woman, right? I think she's like the token woman in the White House, essentially, and besides Kellyanne Conway to some extent. But Ivanka's really held accountable for a lot of any sort of policy, anti-woman policy or anti-woman rhetoric and things like that. And so it makes sense that I think that she would be unfavorable amongst young women who are predominantly more liberal, right?
Yeah. Well, so there's a couple of things here. As you point out, progressives are so much more liberal. Young people are so much more liberal or progressive than previous generations that older generations have a hard time comprehending it. They still want to talk about left, right, and all that stuff. There's very little right to speak of in 18 to 34-year-olds.
Right.
So, and for the mainstream media, it's hard for them to get it through their head. They're like, "What do you mean? Trump's president." So Breitbart must be doing great among the kids. Which 18 to 34-year-olds are looking at Breitbart, right? Yeah. So there's some teenage boys who are trolls online and enjoy being trolls. But that's a really—
I'm familiar with them.
Yes, we're all familiar with them. So yes, you have some 15 to 17-year-olds who are knuckleheads and enjoy that stuff. But it's a tiny minority. So of course, among young women, she's not going to be liked because they're very progressive and she's not. The second part of this is that she's a fraud, and it's harder to trick millennials because they actually get their information online. So they can actually look up what her policy positions are. And they can see with their own eyes that she's supporting Donald Trump, who doesn't do any of the things that she claims she's in favor of. Whereas in the mainstream media, they do these narratives, they call them narratives, right? And the narrative for Ivanka Trump is she's a moderating influence on Donald Trump, and she's helping him with women and with young people. Why? Because she's a woman and young, relatively young. Yeah. But you have no evidence of that. We have polling now that indicates the complete opposite. Right. But TV guys will say it anyway because they do their narrative whether it's true or not true.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting because a lot of the times when I hear people speak favorably about Ivanka, it's older women, which I understand, and they're coming from a different sort of, let's be real, like a feminist background where they're thinking like, oh, we need to support other women, and she is this young woman who's having a say on him taking care of the people who were chemically attacked in Syria and things like that, and she's a businesswoman and all these other things. But for a lot of younger women, we don't just necessarily like look at a woman and blindly and say we have to support them, because there's a lot of women out there who spew a lot of hatred and bigotry, and this is a particular woman who is, if she is supposedly moderating the president, she's not doing a very good job at it.
Yeah, I think that it's important to highlight the notion that many people will often excuse these ratings by simply stating that, oh, it's because she's Donald Trump's daughter and people just don't like Donald Trump, so they're necessarily not going to like his daughter. And that may well be the case in some instances, but as you mentioned, Cenk, it's important that she's actually held accountable because she does have a role specifically, and as she's pushing forward this narrative that she's there to push forward women's rights, and that she's actually for a lot of things that are going forward to try and, I would say, improve Donald Trump's previous policies that we know he's not been in favor of women, and he hasn't pushed forward policies to help women as he's looking to roll back Planned Parenthood. If she is responsible for that, she's not doing a good job at that. So rather than scrutinize her because simply put, oh, she's Donald Trump's daughter. No. She's got a role. If she's specifically when it comes to women involved in politics, we're not going to sugarcoat around the idea that just because she's Donald Trump's daughter, she gets an excuse and that people just don't like her because they don't like Donald Trump. She has a role that has to be held accountable for, specifically with young women looking for aspiring role models. At the moment, she's not one. And that's because her duties, she's not fulfilling those duties that she said she was going to do.
I mean, to back up what both of you are saying, proof's in the pudding. So I don't know if she's a moderating influence. I hope she is. I see articles written about how she's fighting against Steve Bannon behind the scenes. And if she winds up helping to get Steve Bannon out of the White House, then I'll give her credit for that. Okay, so credit where credit is due. But in terms of women's issues, she hasn't helped at all. Right. So even if she intends to do well, she hasn't. Yeah. She helped Donald Trump get elected, and he's been disastrous for women's rights. I mean, look, I can give you 1,000 examples. Let me just give one here. Look, you know that he cut funding for programs on reproductive rights, and even ones that barely had anything to do with abortion, as Republican presidents do, et cetera. But one program he cut had nothing to do with abortion at all. It was a program aimed to help women internationally. It was a United Nations program, and one of the things that it does is it helps the fight against genital mutilation. And he cut the funding for that anyway. So if Ivanka Trump says she's helping women behind the scenes, well, we haven't seen it in front of the scenes at all yet.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right. A Muslim teen in Pennsylvania dismantled a popularly held stereotype about women who used the hijab, and she did so with a text to her dad in Saudi Arabia. Now, this is a picture of Lamia, who is 17 years old. And so she was in this group chat, okay, and they were talking about politics, and Trump came up, and she obviously, as a young Muslim woman in America, decided to kind of stand up for herself. She has some pretty strong views about Trump, so she stood up for herself, and somebody in the group chat responded something pretty harsh. She goes, "Stop defending Islam, bitch. Shut up, you couldn't take that scarf off or your dad would beat your ass." So she was very offended by this and decided to actually prove him wrong by texting her dad and not telling him any of sort of the context around this. So she texted her dad, "Baba, I want to tell you something." He says, "Talk to me." And then in Arabic, he says, "Are you okay, my love?" She goes, "Yeah, I'm okay. I was thinking I want to take my hijab off," okay? Then he responds, "Sweetheart, that's not my decision to make. That's no man's decision to make. If it's what you feel like you want to do, go ahead. I'll support you no matter what. Is everything okay? Did something happen?" So she posted this next to the tweet from the person in her group chat to sort of prove that it's not always an act of oppression and that women are being forced to do so by fathers or husbands or whatever. And she got over 142,000 retweets for this text experiment that she did. A lot of people supporting her for showing this. A lot of people who also came out and talked about what their hijab means to them. Of course, she also faced some backlash for women that said just because you're not oppressed doesn't mean that there are other women that aren't oppressed. And so I do think that this sort of is a nice example of two sides of the argument around the hijab and around some of the rules of Islam religion.
Yeah, so I don't like the hijab at all. So that's my personal opinion, and it's not necessary according to the Quran. So I've read the relevant sections of the Quran regarding that. It doesn't say you have to cover your head, especially if you're a woman, but not if you're a man. It just doesn't say that. But it is a cultural thing that has developed, and I think it is to keep women down. And so I know that some women have internalized it and think that they're doing it because of religious reasons, cultural reasons, but in respect of their culture. I've said this 1,000 times. There are great parts of culture that should be revered. I'm a nostalgic guy. There's a lot of American culture that I love. Some parts of Turkish culture where my family is originally from, but there's a lot of terrible parts of culture. And so we shouldn't be wed to it just because it exists. And so at the same time, I think making people take the hijab off is almost as bad as making them wear it, because you're still taking away their freedom and their liberty, and that's not the values and the culture that I agree with.
Yeah.
Coming from a Western perspective, I think freedom says they should be allowed to do whatever you want. That doesn't mean that I can't try to dissuade them from it and we have a conversation around it. So I like that she broke down stereotypes by saying, hey, it's my choice, and you don't know what my family situation is, you don't know what my religion is. But I also think that it was interesting pushback when people said, well, in your case it's a choice, but for a lot of women across the world it isn't. So, good points.
Yeah, the text message itself breaks down stereotypes. Many people assume that her father would have been in outrage at this and would have told her, you're going to burn in hell for showing you, for not standing by what is to believe in, questioning what your decision is. Because you mentioned it there, whether you have your opinions towards what this culture represents and what these women should choose to do, is that you have your opinion, but you're not forcing it upon them. Like many Westerners feel that it's their right to try and liberate Muslim women by being like, okay, you're free now, you're in the United States, you can take that off. And that's like you're almost enforcing a very similar thing that conservative Muslims on their side are forcing towards them, because they're stating, no, you need to cover up. This is everything that you stand for. You don't have a choice. This is what you're doing. So it took me back to an article that was written in Fusion not long ago, where a woman was basically stated in the headline, Westerners and conservative Muslims, stop telling me what to wear. And that's the whole message to put across, is that there's going to be 1,000 different opinions, but we are so naive when it comes to education surrounding the religion of Islam. We know that. Like, that's why it's so easy to push forward these misconceptions, and Donald Trump can gather everyone behind him and have this mountainous attack towards a certain group of people, because we're so uneducated on it and we don't understand. So we just kind of flock to whatever one person says. So more stories like this are so important, because we need to educate ourselves further. Whether you believe something and you have your own opinion, as you said, Cenk, it's still not our place to try and push our Western ideology onto people.
Yeah, Francis, I think you make a really good point, right? Because it is difficult to parse out, right? Because in some cultures, it is forced upon women, right? But when we look at more secular cultures, women who still choose to wear the hijab or not, for a lot of women, there was a hashtag that said #hijab to me, and a lot of women wrote about how it was a source of femininity for them, or it made them feel more bold and strong in their choice to do it. So it can mean different things to different people. And I think that's really the core of this, right? Is that we assume that Islam is somehow different than a lot of religions. And I think when we talk about it, it's different than a lot of religions. But just like any religion, it's not monolithic in its manifestation. And I think that's what we need to remember, is that for some women, the hijab might be a sign of or oppression, but for some women, it might be a source of liberation. And we need to accept both manifestations of women who decide or don't decide to wear it.
Yeah, you're right about a lot of different religions have different rules. So for example, a friend of mine is on the New Jersey coast. He's really early in the morning. He happened to get up early and he goes into the ocean, and notice there's a conservative, I guess Orthodox, I don't know the specific strand of Jewish family that's there, right? And he noticed after a while there's a pattern. Every time he goes in the ocean, they come out of the ocean. He goes into the ocean, they come out of the ocean, right? He comes out of the ocean, they go back into the ocean. He's like, what the hell is going on, right? And it turns out that for that particular sect of Judaism, they couldn't have the women in the water at the same time as him. Okay, to me that's super goofy. It's an ocean. Right? There's probably guys in the ocean down in Miami at the same time as you're in there in New Jersey. But that's like their opinion, man. And it doesn't mean every Jew does it that way. It doesn't mean every Muslim wears a hijab or a burqa, and that there is a distinction between those two things. So there's a de-hijab movement apparently of people getting rid of their hijab. As a person, again, who's very secular, I love it. I think that the hijab is basically propaganda and an old school culture that we don't need and that I don't think helps women. But on the other hand, the people trying to take it off, can you imagine if you went up to, whether it's those conservative Jews in New Jersey or it's conservative Muslims in France where they're trying to get them to take their hijabs off on the beach or whatever, right? And you say, okay, not only do you have to take off one article of clothing above your head, you also have to take off your top. Let me see I want to see you topless. You'd be like, what?
Right.
Like, that's unbelievable. Of course you can't do that, right? Yeah. But why is it that much different? No, it's their choice what they get to wear. I mean, if you're secular, that should be the core of your beliefs.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think if you are progressive and you want people to have freedom to choose or whatever, then they can choose to be really religious or they can choose to be really secular. The whole point is about having that choice and having the ability to make that choice.
Yeah.
So I think that's important. All right.
All right, next, let's
Moving
do it.
on. Victoria's Secret has announced their yearly What is Sexy list, and no surprise, no surprise to anybody who's ever seen a Victoria's Secret show or looked at their catalog. I've definitely just dated myself by saying catalog. It's a bunch of thin white women. So basically they said what is sexy for this year. It's bold, powerful, and confident. That's what sexy means to us, and that's what all the winners of our annual roundup embody. From artists to athletes, these women and men are at the top of their game and inspire us to work harder and keep it sexy every day. And all of these women, with exceptions of like 2 or 3, are skinny white women, which is in line with a lot of the women that they feature in their show, on their website, and a lot of their ads. So we have Taylor Swift, of course, Mandy Moore. There's a few exceptions here. Vanessa Hudgens, who's Filipino and Native American, Priyanka Chopra, and Alexa Chung. But Chrissy Teigen as well. And then of course we have one dude in the final graphic here, James Corden, who is apparently the sexiest late night host. I think that might be more of a function that there's not a lot of late night women hosts, but
yeah.
I'll save that conversation for a different video.
Wait, are there any? Right, I think that.
There used to be
Samantha
Chelsea
Bee.
Handler, but she doesn't really, she doesn't
Yeah.
do that
Samantha
anymore.
Bee does,
Samantha Bee,
yeah.
sort of, yeah.
I like Corden representing the overweight men in the sexy category. You know,
Well, also
Jimmy
there's no plus size women in this entire list,
yeah.
which is a problem as well. There's no black women, there's no plus size women. There's a huge issue here. Victoria's Secret, wake up.
Yeah, but we're not surprised by this, right? Skinny's been in for almost as long as I've been alive, and not always. I remember my grandpa thought that skinny women were ridiculous. They used to like fuller figures back in the day, and of course everybody varies. But in terms of the mainstream media and these magazines and these lingerie things, they've been pushing skinny women on us for forever.
Yeah, but also I think lately it's been, and in good faith, I think it's been a PR move, right, and a trend that we're seeing more plus size women in these ads, and we're seeing your Ashley Grahams, we're seeing these women airy doing unretouched ads. So it's actually the move now, I think, to have more plus size women, to have more variation, to have more diversity. Target just did a completely unretouched bathing suit campaign, which was amazing and beautiful and showing the diversity of women. And I think Victoria's Secret is actually lagging behind on the trend in this case.
I was surprised by it for the simple reason that we do a bunch of stories on sports about Sports Illustrated and their message that they put forward, because Sports Illustrated, let's be honest, right, it's mostly dudes that are going to go out and buy Sports Illustrated. You get the magazine in, you look at all the women in bikinis. So they pushed forward a message, I believe, the previous campaign where they were being more inclusive and they were being body positive, and we had women of all different shapes and sizes, and that was their message they put forward. And then they backtracked, I believe, last year, and they went back to their usual go-to, I guess, because they might not have seen the sales. I don't know necessarily what their reasoning was, but it was surprising for Victoria's Secret because Sports Illustrated is aimed at a male demographic. Yeah, most guys will probably tune in to watch the Victoria's Secret fashion show because we're kind of perverted. We want to go and watch that, and we can sit down with our girlfriend and pretend that we're just there to watch it with her because they watch it also.
Does any girlfriend buy that? Like, oh, honey, I want to check out the latest fashion with you.
I want to check out what I'm going to buy you for Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
So, but they sell clothing to all different women shapes and sizes. So you would think that if they were to push forward a message that in the end is going to affect their bottom line, which everyone, regardless of what you make yourself think, is out there to do, is to increase their profits, that they would try to be more encouraging to not just the skinny stereotype, that they would want to push forward and promote women of all shapes and sizes, because they sell to all shapes and sizes, if I'm correct.
The range, right, yeah.
Yeah, but that's the amazing thing about marketing, though. If you, the conventional wisdom, and I think there's certainly elements of it that are correct, is that if you put women that society has marketed as not as attractive into the ads, it drives people away because people aspire to be the people that they see in those ads. So look, in terms of males and what we're attracted to, think of the power of marketing in that. I'm serious. Like in my grandfather's generation, women who were plus size were much more desirable, considered much more desirable, right? My father's generation is somewhere in the middle, and for us, we have internalized it that skinny women are more attractive. And it is the power of mass marketing, and it's fascinating. And I think that it's had a different effect on women where they think, oh, if it's someone that I have been taught is attractive, well, I want to be like that, and hence I'll buy it.
But what a power to hold, right? Think about how many women watch Victoria's Secret. Think about that is like one of the probably the most well-known lingerie brand in the world. What a beautiful power that they have to be able to show women of different shapes and sizes and to show women the diverse range of beauty that exists. I think it's really frustrating as a woman to look through these magazines and only see one type of woman. A lot of the times that is an unrealistic ideal for so many women around the world. And so I think it's really important that these companies in 2017 step forward and start to make a real difference and showing women themselves in these magazines. And it's not fair to say that like, oh, that skinny is hot, because that's not necessarily true for most people. Like for your father or for whomever, like there's a lot of people who are into all different, shapes and sizes and whatever. Like let's show those women too and show them that they are also hot and sexy.
So I've just got a question out of curiosity, because I know you've talked about, you watch the Victoria's Secret fashion shows. When you're watching it, what is your thought process? When you see these women, are you motivated? Are you like, do you want to go out and try to aspire? Like, cause you're very in shape and you go out.
I'll be completely honest. I am a thinner white woman myself, and I watch that show and feel really shitty about myself and feel that I need to eat healthier and go to the gym and all these things. And I think I'm very body positive. I'm very open with that on my Instagram and like talking about that and the way that I work out and the way that I carry myself, 100%. But even myself as a thin white woman who, is more similar, I think, than the rest, not similar to a Victoria's Secret model, let me just be honest. But I just mean, more similar than the larger demographic. I feel so shitty about myself watching that show. I enjoy, like it's like a hate watch sort of thing. But I can't even imagine for the majority of the country what they look like. And it sickens me. And I think these women are great and a lot of them have great causes. And I don't want to, fault the angels for anything or whatever like that. But I do fault Victoria's Secret for not having more diversity when it comes to who they show in both their ads, who they show in the show, because it is so important for young girls to see an advertisement and to see in the media girls who look like them, and so that they don't feel like they're an outcast or they have to change in some sort of way to fit these unrealistic beauty standards that the media sets out for them. I think this is crucial. I think Victoria's Secret needs to step up to the plate and catch on to the trend and then also lead the trend, because this is a huge change that we need to see for young women and frankly for young men.
Well, at this point, I'm impervious to marketing because, as I told you in the past, like, we got marketed into our heads that this is what's attractive. But like, if I see a guy who looks great on a billboard or whatever, I'm like, well, he plays his game, I play my game. Somebody pass me a cheesesteak. Okay, let's see if we can squeeze in the next story in a minute and a half. Go.
All right. So it seems as though United's PR person cannot catch a break. There was a guy who was dragged off the plane. Then there was a scorpion who fell on a United plane and stung somebody. And then there was another just married couple who was dragged off the plane. And now they're at it again because the stock market is declined for United. And additionally, apparently most Americans would rather pay more for a flight, all right, then take United, all right? So listen to this. So according to a Morning Consult poll that surveyed a national sample of 1,900 American adults, 79% of respondents who had heard about United's recent news said they would choose a different airline if that airline, the poll specifically used American Airlines as a stand-in, offered an identical flight for the same price, okay? So that's if there's the same price, right? Now, when presented with a hypothetical scenario in which the competing flight was both more expensive and longer, requiring a layover instead of a direct arrival, 44% of the respondents who had heard about United's recent news would still choose the alternative flight rather than fly United. This blows my mind. This shows you just how important PR is, and especially responding to sort of negative PR situations. I mean, the United CEO responded very negatively.
Yeah. The thing that I love about it is finally we're getting pushback from customers on planes going, I'm not going to take this behavior anymore. They pushed us around for way too long. And this is us saying, we'll even pay more to stop this nonsense. God bless. Okay, we're out of time. We'll see you in the post-game. Bye-bye. Young Turks. In hour one, we were talking about the Korean War. Not the one that's gonna happen, but the one that ended in 1948. And so John Idarola was reading about it recently, and so we / the South Korean allies dropped an untold number of bombs on North Korea, leveled almost every house in some of the cities in North Korea, and they still wouldn't give up. And now part of that is obstinance, part of it is the old Soviet mentality. They're never part of the Soviet Union, but they're part of that communist bloc. And so the same thing with Stalingrad. Now, Stalingrad was great because they were fighting the Nazis. And no matter how much the Nazis bombed Stalingrad, they would not fucking surrender. And so that turned the war around, and it was historically important and wonderful. But also you read into it a little bit more, and Stalin had ordered that if anyone went to surrender, to shoot them in the head. Okay, so now that also happened in North Korea to some degree. Okay, so, but I want to tell you a personal story. My physics teacher in high school was Mr. Pinfield, okay? Now, super random fact, some of you guys that are around my age might remember, his son was Matt Pinfield, who was an MTV host and VJ. Okay, you guys won't remember because you're too young.
This is when MTV played music?
Yes, yes, that's right, all the way back then, okay? So anyway, Mr. Pinfield walked around on a cane because he was in the Korean War and had gotten hurt there.
Yeah.
And one day he's like, oh, Jane, you're Turkish. Let me tell you about the Turks I fought with in Korea. Okay, here, fun. We'll do 2 fun Korean War stories. Okay, one's even more personal, relating to TYT. So in Korea, the Americans were there, obviously, South Koreans and the Turks. Those were the 3 biggest contingents. There were many, many other countries that were represented, but for whatever reason, there was a huge Turkish contingent there because they were part of the Allies fighting back against the communists. And Mr. Pinfield served with the Turks, obviously under the Americans, but alongside the Turks. So he said at one point they were surrounded, the American forces that Mr. Pinfield was with and the Turkish forces by the North Koreans. And the American commander on the scene went to the Turkish commander and said, we're surrounded, we have to surrender. And the Turkish commander said, oh, that's an interesting point, took out his gun and put it to the American commander's head and said, we never surrender. And so there's no surrendering here, we will fight our way out, okay?
Wow.
So now this is Mr. Pinfield telling the story, I don't know, I wasn't there, right?
Yeah.
Now, if that happened today, we'd have an international incident over it, and America would want to invade Turkey, right, over that. So we all, of course, being, I think we were juniors in high school, we were like, so what happened, Mr. Pinfield? He's like, well, I'm here, aren't I?
Oh. Wow.
He said, and I said, but weren't you pissed that the Turkish commander put a gun to the head of your commander, the US commander?
Yeah, I'm putting your life at stake, essentially.
That's right, right, you might have died there, you might have all died. He's like, no, we all thought it was ballsy and amazing, and we fought our way out.
Wow.
That's
super interesting.
Yeah.
Super interesting.
So I was like, wow, okay. So that was the old days. And that's how apparently they rolled back in the day, and everybody was fine. And then we got back to
That's
fighting
so
together.
admirable to have that spirit. Do you know what I mean?
It is. Don't put a gun to anybody's
Yeah, don't
head.
put a gun to anybody's head. No, I meant more for Mr. Pinfield being like, yeah, let's get ourselves and let's do this.
I feel like we need to hit it. Is Mr. Pinfield still living? I feel like we need to get some sort of script written out of that. That could be a pretty good movie, pretty interesting movie.
So I don't know, but I'd be surprised. He was fairly old back then.
He was?
Yeah. Mr. Pinfield and I got along great until we didn't. And then he was part of the folks who decided to suspend me once because I'd cursed too many times at teachers.
No.
So then I got my own show so I can curse all the time.
Yeah. Well, that was my problem all the way from the beginning, which is that I did not have proper respect for authority figures. And by the way, Mr. Pinfield was right. I did curse, and I should have been suspended for that. Okay. And I did fight my way out of that suspension. Anyway, so that was a fun little story. Fun since he survived and was our teacher. And so here's a more interesting story out of Korea. Steve O's dad was in Korea.
Oh, I love this story.
I
love this
I haven't.
Okay,
yeah.
Yeah. So Steve-O's dad is in Korea at the time, of course, and he gets assigned to be the cook for the Turkish soldiers fighting in the Korean War.
No.
Okay, and the UN keeps giving the Turkish soldiers Spam, but since they're Muslim, they don't eat it because it's ham, right? So they like Mr. O, and they're like, "Do you want it, Mr. O?" He's like, "Sure, I'll take it."
Yeah.
And he goes and he buries all of the Spam. Okay, he can't eat all that Spam, so he goes and buries it. After the war is over, he goes and takes it out and sells it. Okay, and that is part of how they got the money to move to America.
How amazing is that?
Okay.
That's mind blowing.
And then it turns out, his son, one of his best friends growing up, is Turkish.
Wow.
He's like, oh my God, how unbelievable.
I thought the way you were going in this story, it was like he just fed Steve Spam from an early age, and Steve just grew like a obsession with Spam. Like, we got Spam in TYT, where's our Spam order?
We still have it here. With Spam, you could still have it.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, isn't that
crazy.
amazing?
So he sold that to, I guess, people in his country, and then was able to leave and come to the United States.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
So, O family, you're welcome. See, there's Islam actually being slightly helpful.
There you go.
Very true. Very true. I love that he buried it. That's like the best part of the entire story.
I know, isn't that such a super
You just like
cool-
imagine him like shoveling and then like putting all this Spam on the ground.
Yeah, there's like a Shawshank Redemption kind of feel to that
So
story. Yeah.
Does anyone actually have you guys ever eaten Spam? Hannah, I would go out on a limb and say never in your life have you eaten
What
eaten
would
Spam.
give you that impression?
Considering I
Francis?
saw you walk in every day with a concoction that looks like the gardener has whipped it up for you. It's like
straight out of the lawnmower.
It's great, it's organic.
Yeah. And by looking at me, I'm going to assume that you think I have.
No, because I've been, one of the first clips I was on, the Young Turks, I believe, was when I was doing Twitter Storm, and someone asked you a question, it's like, Cenk, why do you not stay true to your Muslim faith or something along the lines? And you were like, bacon. And you said, I smell bacon. So I was like, okay, I guess it was bacon. I don't imagine anyone really converted because Spam was so good.
No.
Yeah.
I think I once tried it and I was like, oh, this is as undelicious as I would have imagined. And that was the only time I've ever tried a piece of it. Because there's too many great food in the world to waste your time eating Spam. And look, no disrespect, I guess some people have to, right?
Yeah.
And I went through years and years of my life on mac and cheese and cereal. Is it because there wasn't other great food? No, that's all I could afford.
Yeah.
Right? So I hear you on that, brothers and sisters. But if you can, I would avoid it.
I would too. Interesting.
So one last thing on how life's a full circle. Then Mr. O, this is another story I probably told on one other post game. Mr. O paid back the favor to the Turks because he helped me get out of. Actually, it was several traffic tickets.
Oh, really?
Because Mr. O ran the 7-Eleven, one of the 7-Elevens in town, and he used to give free coffee to the cops. So the cops in East Brunswick, you want to talk about white privilege? We had O privilege.
And he never gave free Pepsis, just free coffees?
Just free coffees, okay? But all the cops in East Brunswick loved Mr. O. So Steve could drive like a maniac through town. It doesn't matter, he'd get pulled over and say, oh, so nice to see you again. They're like, wait, are you Mr. O's son? Oh, yes, I am. They're like, oh, you're free to go. Okay.
Wow.
And he told me that later, like in our senior year, and I got pulled over right as I was almost at Steve's house. And I was like, oh, I was going to visit Mr. O. And the guy's like, well, I was gonna give you 3 tickets because you're a monster. Okay, but I'll knock it down to 1 and the lightest infraction because you're going to see Mr. O.
Steve.
Damn.
That's privilege.
Damn.
Yeah, I could just imagine Steve would take full advantage of that.
Oh, totally.
He would have been flying around, no doubt.
All right, so last thing is I promised you guys my son's reaction to what I do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So now people come up to me fairly regularly, and so a couple of weeks ago my daughter said, Mina Baba, how do they all know your name, right? And so I explained, and they kind of know that I have a YouTube show, and they certainly know what YouTube is because they watch YouTube Kids and they watch music videos on YouTube and stuff. And so they think that's cool. That's like they probably think, they're 6 and 4. They probably think half the dads in the world do YouTube shows.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, what do they know?
But it's also their really young generation, so that's their version of TV. You know what I mean? That's their version of like the biggest media.
Right. So you would think that they would want to do it, right? And sure, and he does. He wants to do YouTube shows and stuff. But then I explained to him like the story of Democracy Spring, because I know that they're really young, but I'm trying to teach them at an early age, and I'm treating them some cases like adults. Because I think that if you have high expectations, they'll live up to it, I hope, right? So I explained how I went and got arrested, but it was for a good cause, because it was a law that's not the right law. 99% of the laws are good, and you make sure you obey them and yada yada. But if you're gonna do it, you should do it in a certain way, and there's this thing called protest. And I said, look, I was one of the leaders of that, and I explained that leaders eat last. That's a saying. And so I was out there the longest. I was in jail, kind of, right? It was a big warehouse that they kept us in. The longest, some people were let out at 4 in the afternoon. We were let out at midnight because 1,400 people had been arrested, and we were at the end, and in that case, it was also literal. We hadn't eaten all day, right? So I explained that. I said, but there was a really cool moment, as I've told you guys in a different post game. That when I walked into the warehouse, I was one of the last guys to walk in, and there's over 1,000 people there at the time, and they all spontaneously started chanting "Jang, Jang, Jang, Jang," which was awesome and one of the greatest moments of my life. Okay, so I explained the whole thing to him, and I'm like, "So what do you think?" He's like, "Nope, I don't want to be a leader."
Not just I don't want to be on YouTube, I don't want to be a leader.
Yeah, I don't want to be a leader. And I'm like, why? He's like, leaders eat last. To him, he's like, where's the question? This is not complicated.
He's like, I want the food. I get it.
Yeah. It's like, why would I want to stay in jail the longest? And why would I want to eat less?
That's amazing. It's just kids have just such brute honesty, man. Like, there's no way around it. Amazing. But with the name Prometheus, I was just like in my head, just envisioning him to just stand up and give a speech, but like, my name's Prometheus Maximus, son to a dad that was in jail.
That's right. Well, look, naming him Prometheus is questionable on my part, of course, because and it's true. You can tell some things, not everything, some things by what people name their kids, right? So I, of course, envy Prometheus, the mythical character. I think he's my favorite mythical character. That's why I named my son after him, right? And joy, well, those are the things I care about, doing the right thing and being happy, right? And this is another topic we often discuss. With Trump, for example, he named his last son Barron because he looks up to the robber barons. I mean, Baron is such a incredibly weird name to name your son this day and age. Right. You know what I'm saying? Now, it's not, I don't want to overanalyze, but it's a little something. And Ivanka and Jared named their kids after the Kennedy's kids. Isn't that interesting? So it's, you can't prove it. It's Joseph Theodore. By itself, those two, whatever, right? But their daughter's name is Arabella. Arabella was the one, was Jackie's stillborn baby. Okay, so it's kind of weird, right? But so the theory is those are Kennedy-esque names.
Have they come out and said that?
I don't think they have. Okay. So to be fair to them, we don't know that anywhere near with any degree of certainty, right? And maybe they just liked Arabella for a different reason, right? And here they are. They wanted to be kind of wanted to be political royalty, right? Or media royalty. And here we are, right? So watch out where you name your kid.
Yeah. Well, when you're in LA, I think when you first told me, I like the name Prometheus, and I mean, I like how you abbreviate it as well. But he's going to be running around with a bunch of apples and norths, and all these names that are sent out there just based on whatever their favorite fruit is or whatever else. I think that more often than not, specifically in America, like as I come from Scotland, and most people are named after specific, like what their historical context is, or if it's a family name that's my mother's side's Irish, my dad's side's Irish, they wanted to name me after my grandfather on the Irish side, so France is a very Irish name. But here, it becomes a popularity thing, and I think that it moves away from the meaning behind it rather than, okay, what can be the most unique and hardest to pronounce when it comes to LA.
Yeah.
So.
Real quick funny story is I actually named my sister. My little sister.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was supposed to be Hannah and Emily, but they're gonna name her Emily or Hannah and Hillary. They hadn't decided yet between Emily and Hillary.
I vote against Hillary.
And so I guess
I don't know what her name is, so I'm kidding. I don't know which one.
it's not Hillary. You're safe. You're
Okay,
safe.
all right.
So
I vote for Bernie.
They they hadn't decided yet, and they were like holding her, and like I came to the hospital, and like she's a little baby. I like climbed on the bed. I was like, I'm gonna call you Jessica, and like that's her name.
Oh really?
Yeah, Mrs. Bossy Pants.
Okay, baby boss.
Yeah, literally.
How old were you?
I was like 3.5.
Oh, okay.
So I was just like, no, that's what I'm gonna call her. So you guys can either jump on board or not, but I'm gonna call her this. My parents were like, okay, I guess.
This train's leaving the station. So
well, good thing you came up with a cool name. I mean, you stood up there and be like, I'm gonna call you Angus. Well, I guess it's
it is what it is.
Angus
You're welcome,
Cranston.
Jessica.
No offense to anyone in Scotland called Angus, by the way. I know there's millions of you.
Yeah, and last one is I got named somewhat similarly. And great uncle walked in and they were trying to decide between Jank and Mert, and he didn't know that it wasn't settled. He thought it was Jank, and so he just started calling me Jank, and it got awkward. And they didn't they were like, we don't want to correct him. He's an elder of the family. I guess it's Jank.
That's cool.
Otherwise, I would have been Mert Uger.
Mert Uger.
Yeah.
I like Jank.
I like Jank better. Yeah. Thanks, great uncle, whoever you were.
I like Jank, and I still like that. There's still so many people that will call it Sank or what's the most common
Sank, Chank. I've heard Chank.
Chank actually is the most common.
Yeah.
Because they're trying hard.
Yeah.
Well, Sank and Chank are neck and neck, and then Jank, Yank sometimes, Hank, Sink. Sanka.
It's amazing where the mind will go. And I don't want to rag on Americans too much, but because you guys pronunciate everything, right? So when I did the little video around the studio of pronouncing British soccer team names, because specifically the team called Leicester, which is spelled Leicester. And just the way you can literally see their wheels turning, and it's like Leicester, Leicester. Like they'll just try and pronounce every little syllable of it.
I'm sure I've done that.
Yeah, it's just like that's Leicester. Interesting.
Yeah. I briefly had a Filipino girlfriend, and she used to call me "Oh Zhang." It's true. Okay. Anyway, God bless. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you guys.